Everybody, to the Public Safety and the Land Use and Legislative Committee meeting. This is a special meeting combined with the two legislative committees. And we are here today to discuss the police reform proposals. We do have some ground rules today. So in order to get things done, we need to start a conversation. And that's why we're here today, to talk. I would ask that everybody be respectful of each other. There'd be no name calling, no taking out of anybody, no chanting, no raising your signs, because we are being televised, and this committee meeting is to talk. And if you're yelling and screaming and acting out, nothing gets done. So you will have the beginning, you'll have the 4-minute public comments, like always, and we ask that you do state your name. And then we will go over each of these proposals one-on-one. If you have a question, please raise your hand, okay? Address the question to me, and we have the deputy chiefs here as well, and the chief of police is here as well with his other deputy chiefs. So everybody's here. The staff and command are here, and the council meeting, and we also have an extra council person here. So at that point, does everybody understand the rules? So if one person gets out of line, you will be given a warning. And if you don't comply, you will be asked to leave. And if you refuse to leave, the meeting will be immediately adjourned and then nothing will be accomplished. Okay? We're here to talk and get along, okay? So that's why I'm having this meeting here today. And Terry Morris is the chairperson of the Legislative and Land Use Committee meeting. So with that, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here.
Councilman Hogg.
Here.
And also, there's a little change in the agenda. We are not going to be approving the minutes of public safety and or land use because this is a combined meeting, so we'll be doing those at our respective meetings. So here we go. We are going to start with citizens to be heard. I guess there's a list of people that have signed up. And if you haven't signed up, you will still be able to speak. Just raise your hand, okay? So who's the first one, Karen?
Jerry Hervey.
Pardon me?
Yes.
Yes. The only one thing on the agenda tonight is the proposals. That's all we're talking about tonight. Because we're going to be here a little while, and this is to start the dialogue.
Okay. All right. Jerry Hervey, lifelong Joliet resident, council, everybody else. So the thing that I'm looking at is the body cameras. So how soon can we get something done with body cameras? Why is this still an issue? Get the policy done. Give them 90 days. That's it. Body cameras is the #1 thing that we need in this community to make sure that policing is done effectively. They don't want cameras because they can't go to business as usual. But if people can see what they are doing, it is a problem. But it'll also help streamline the judicial process. You file a report, you take somebody to jail, you give up the evidence from the video camera. That's it. Why is there so much pushback on that? Please do something to get it done.
Thank you. Who's next, Karen?
Jonathan Marquardt.
Like was just said, my name is Jonathan Marquardt, lived in Joliet for 24 years. I want to start by saying that I'm glad we finally got something going here. I know that we're definitely not happy with how long that some things have taken. I know that we're definitely not happy with the way that things have been handled, but I personally think that I'm happy to be here today, regardless of the previous circumstance. The proposals that we've handed you, they are a good thing for the city. These proposals provide some very badly needed accountability that won't put anybody out of a job that wasn't already doing the right things at their job. Specifically, I'm looking at items 2 through 4, 7 through 10, and 13. These, frankly, should have been in place from the jump. These should already be here. And some of these I'm personally subject to at my job. I'm subject to anti-racism training. I could be subject to a random drug test if needed. This is pretty standard stuff for a lot of jobs in and out of Joliet. City of Joliet police officers are public servants, and this is some accountability that is really needed in a sensitive position like that. Aside from those that I just mentioned, these are quality of life measures for the city. These will make citizens more at ease with the community without strengthening an authoritative presence in their community. These will ensure that the right things are done for the right issues, and they'll hopefully save some lives. Broken windows policing is the term mostly used for this. It has a really long and ugly history. It has disproportionately affected poorer communities. It has disproportionately affected communities of color. And its time has come. It's time to get rid of these sort of measures. A lot of people think that minor infractions shouldn't be a death sentence. I don't think it should be a death sentence. But a lot of people do fear for their lives some days, living in the communities that they have, that something might happen to them if they run across a police officer that might be having a bad day or something. I don't know what's going on. But people fear for their lives sometimes, and they really shouldn't. If you do care about the city and the people that you represent, you should support these reforms. There's nothing but positives here for the city of Joliet. I've tried to be proud of my city for the entirety of my life, and I hope you do right by me in trying to feel that pride tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Connor Lonergan.
As you know, as mentioned before, a lot of these reforms really should have happened way before, but thankfully we're at least having the dialogue sooner rather than later. Okay.
You're not done. Go, sorry.
These reforms really should have been. It's good that these reforms are being done now and not being on hold. I will also say that I am a little disappointed that not the entire city council is here. I'm sure procedure is why, but I would prefer if all the council members and the mayor was here. And hopefully at the end of this meeting, each single of these reforms are passed unanimously. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Yes.
Just to point out, sir, the mayor is sitting right back there. Well, he's not on the committees, so you're right, there is procedure.
Okay. Next, Karen.
Candace Quinterly.
I didn't see you right there.
Hello, my name is Candace Quinterly. I'm just personally happy, like Jonathan said, that we're finally having this dialogue. I know that a lot of people are not going to agree with it, and that's fine. But this is, again, it's a quality of life measure. It's a safety issue for the people that live here. And I'm hoping that I worked largely on these, so I would be happy to answer any questions or give any additional sources or whatever you need to get these passed. And you guys do have the amended version, so everybody in the room has it, I think. I'm just hoping that we can have a good dialogue about this tonight.
Thank you. Next, please.
Susanna Burry. Ibarra.
I'm Susanna Ibarra. I would like to thank, first of all, the mayor for being here, and I would like to thank Sherry and the people that didn't have to be here tonight for this, but thought it was important to spend their time here. What I want to know is who wants to be a hero and who wants to save lives. We want transformational change, and we want you all to be the legends of transformational change. Get the cape, be a hero, save lives. Police are not the judge and jury just because they have a gun and a badge. They are here to protect and serve. Now, we're not anti-police at all. At all. I've given the mayor so many compliments on police. We have wonderful Lakota who's been amazing with us, even if he doesn't agree with everything we say. We have Matlock. There's so many good officers on the force. But we're specifically anti-systemic racism, which exists in the police department, and anti-brutality or abuse of power. And since we've written these reforms, I've got calls from bikers who say that they've been a group that's been targeted by the Joliet police for many, many years. Also the LGBTQ community, and with mental health professionals as a first responder with a cop, there are certain circumstances, like one that I saw in the downtown area. There was a transgendered person who was definitely in distress, less than half robed, and I didn't call the cops, completely barefoot in the pouring rain and half dressed, because I didn't want that person to be brutalized. I didn't want that person to be laughed at. I wanted that person to get some help. What do you do in a circumstance like that? That's not necessarily a police thing. That's like a mental health thing. So there are many groups that will benefit from this, including the over-policed communities and the underserved, over-policed, brutalized communities. All we want to do is save lives. The police department hasn't updated training strategies in something like 20 years, and that's something that was told to us in a meeting, that 20 years ago, most cities the size of Joliet, they've updated their police training skills and strategy, and Joliet has stayed behind. So this is what they think protects them. In the United States, the doctrine of qualified immunity grants government officials performing discretionary functions immunity from civil suits unless the plaintiff shows that the officials violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. We are those reasonable legends who have X-ray vision and see right through the shield of qualified immunity that some of them hide behind no more. We are here to show the world our superpower of organizing to expose discretionary functions. Look up in the sky. What is that? That's civil suits raining down. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
Mishona Mitchell.
My name is Mashana Mitchell, former Joliet resident, and I just want to urge you guys to consider these police reforms and also know that we need to hold the police accountable just like we hold the citizens accountable. In addition to the reforms that are listed tonight, we also need every officer, anybody that's working at the police station, they need to be trained and have availability to Narcan for everybody. You never know when you're going to need that Narcan, so each and every person that's employed by the Joliet Police Department needs to be trained and have Narcan available to use.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Minerva Sneed.
My name is Minerva Sneed, formerly of Joliet. Eric Lurie Jr. is my great nephew, and I'm calling on police reform. I want drug tests, and the alcohol is incredible. And each and every one of y'all know that. I want alcohol testing because their limits will be sky high. I want to sit on the police reform board because all the boards you get is ineffective, very ineffective. And I want to sit on that board. You're gonna have regular citizens on that board. Like I said last time, you're not gonna get a group of ministers to be on this board because that's what's previously happened. Not even my own nephew, minister, have been with us. And I want all police officers tested for drugs and alcohol. I work every day. I get drug tested. I want random tests also, not you come in there and you take a drug test. No, I want random tests. I want random alcohol tests because in the police department, there's a bad alcohol problem and there's a bad porno problem in the police officer. We know that from the lady. It's a bad problem with this porno stuff with these police officers. We want that on the agenda too. Thank you. Oh, you're not gonna leave me out on that prison reform board.
Thank you. Next, please.
Michael Retta.
Hi, my name is Michael Rita, a resident of Frankfurt. And first, I'd like to say thank you to the mayor and for members of City Council for being here today to consider the proposals that have been put forth by the community. What we are asking for today is a seat at the table, to come together as leaders and as members of the community to find solutions to the violence that has plagued the city of Joliet for many years. For too long, in countless cities across the country, violence, oppression, and intimidation has been committed by those entrusted to serve and protect the people that fall victim to it. In recent months, we've seen an unprecedented movement of people from all walks of life taking to the streets to say enough is enough. Many of these demonstrations have evoked images of the civil rights movement, of marches, of sit-ins, and as well as dogs and fire hoses being turned against the people demanding justice. The reason we are reminded of these past struggles is because the struggle continues. It continues to grow deeper even as crime declines. Even today, just as it was during the marches of the past, there are people that stand in the way, that hurl epithets, that label us as criminals and rioters, or even worse, tell us you're asking for too much, that now is not the time. People had a choice back then, to stand in the way of progress or to join hands, to have the courage to join hands with those who are marching. The question this committee is faced with today is the same. Do you have the courage to take a stand for what is right, or will we stand in the way of change? What we're asking for is not radical. It has been adopted by cities all over the country. We are faced with systemic problems, and that requires systemic solutions. We need more resources for communities, not more money for militarized police. We need more accountability, not impunity for those who act egregiously. We need you to stand on the right side of history, and maybe one day your children and grandchildren will say they did the right thing. They joined hands with those demanding change instead of standing in their way, stopping them from marching forward to a better world. All we are asking for today is a seat at the table. You know in your hearts what is right, so do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Brittany Kim.
Good evening. As stated, my name is Brittany Kim. While I would like to take this time to call into question the efficacy of how this meeting was brought forward, I will instead choose a couple of my favorite amendments brought to the board in the event that it was not yet reached. So first and foremost, in the city of Joliet, we have increased the police budget over $10 million since 2012. This is not a statistic that hasn't been brought up previously, but it is one that has not been acted upon. This increase has come even though Joliet crime has consistently decreased and is under the state and national average. We are calling for a 50% decrease in police budget, which would be a total of $30 million, to be reinvested into the community. This reinvestment should be into places such as schools, over-policed communities, and infrastructure specifically. The second is the Second Amendment. The city of Joliet must move to create an independent civilian oversight body with the power to make budgetary, disciplinary, hiring, and firing recommendations. This body could be elected or appointed from a list provided by a coalition of community organizations, and individuals serving in the oversight body be free of any ties to the police. There should be no monetary incentive for serving on such community. Example model can be found on your link to the amended. Third, regularly commission a survey to inform the civilian oversight body of the interactions and experiences of the civilians with the police department. The survey should be used to inform police practices, as the city of Milwaukee has done. Fourth, officers' use of force and disciplinary history should be made completely accessible to the public and other police departments for greater transparency. Fifth, establish a team of mental health professionals and social workers to be incorporated as first responders in case of suicide intervention, overdose, and other mental health crises. Model of this exists in Eugene, Oregon, and some degree with the LAPD mental evaluation team. Additionally, required annual mental health assessments of officers to be conducted by a third party. Sixth, end the policing of broken windows offenses by deprioritizing and decriminalizing offenses such as homelessness, loitering, and disturbing the peace. Seventh, ban the use of all chokeholds and neck restraints by the police officers. Additionally, require extensive training to de-escalate techniques during academy and throughout their careers. Eighth, require the use of body cameras for all police officers. Ninth, enact a 3-strike policy For police officers, any offense that would warrant a suspension of 3 days or more would count as a strike. A third strike would mean termination. Any case of excessive force is subject to termination. 10th, enforce anti-racism policies within the department, which would involve extensively vetting even current officers for ties to hate groups. 11th, require random drug tests for officers for illegal substances such as performance-enhancing drugs and hard drugs like cocaine, and implement concrete consequences for positive results. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Karen.
Rachel Ventura.
Good evening. Rachel Ventura, Will County Board Member. I am here representing my constituents, both those who have been abused by the police, but as well as those who believe police have served them well. This is a complex issue. But there has been abuse and lack of accountability from our police officers, not all of them, but yes, a few. I have spoken about this publicly as well as privately with the chief and brass. I'm encouraging you to view and pass these reforms. Obviously, we're having conversations about this all over the country, but even Congress is looking at a police reform with the Democrats passed to the House recently. Having conversations that include community input, like meetings like this, but also having surveys that go out to the community, those who've been affected, and getting buy-in on each and every one of these. These reforms weren't even printed in the newspaper. There are people who don't even know in our city that we're having these conversations right now. So having that input is especially important, and it starts by the people in this room and listening to them. But also having reviews of our budget. Where is our money being spent? I'm not talking about just salaries and benefits, but also how can we shift our funding to community services? How can we shift officers into NOPT or placing them back in our schools so that we can begin building that trust again from a young age and making sure that we are actually serving our community as opposed to enforcing it only? Diversity training, CPR trainings, Narcan trainings, these are just the beginning steps and things that we've seen have failed in recent articles and news stories from our police. But there are other ways to engage skill sets in officers, such as empathy and compassion. We're working with our police and fire board to make sure that we're hiring more local police is important. They represent the community people who live here. That may mean expanding the high school program, the academy program we have today, to train directly from those high school students who sign up for that and have them come and work directly for our police force here. That also means that we should return the requirement that makes officers have to live in the city of Joliet. I understand that this was recently removed from the contract. If they live here, they need to work here. If they work here, they need to live here. Lastly, whatever happened to 3 strikes, you're out. If you're a criminal, 3 strikes, and you're in California, you're for the death penalty. You're sent away for jail. But here, our own mayor was suspended 7 times. 7 times. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable.
Okay, Rachel.
So, no, I'm
Rachel,
just saying, I'm almost done, all right? But
keep your comments general.
Okay.
Don't attack anyone.
No, these are factual things.
I asked you not to attack anyone. Those
Not
are the
attacking
rules.
anyone. I'm not facts are not attacking people. So we need to get back to a period where if someone has done something that's unacceptable in any job, whether it's an elected official or police or a management, that they are held accountable to that. And I think 3 strikes is plenty of opportunities to retrain someone. If they can't do what is needed, if they don't have the compassion and empathy, they don't need to be a police officer. There's a lot of jobs out there that they can do. The blue code of silence needs to end. Silence is complicity. If you're going to sit there and watch someone do something illegal, I don't care if you have a badge on you or you're the president of the United States, if you're doing something that is harmful to another human being and someone sees it, say something. Lastly, I want to thank all of the good police officers. There are several in Joliet. I have run into many of them. I've had conversations with a lot of them. And I want people to remember that asking for police reforms and asking to defund areas that do not serve our community do not mean that we don't value our police officers. It's that we want to protect their lives too. And when everyone is being treated with respect and we have trust, then we have less crime. But when people are not being held accountable and they're breaking the law, it puts good officers at risk because people don't trust them and a few things can get out of hand and next thing you know, you got people being killed, whether they are people in this room or people behind the badge. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joe,
Yes.
just for clarification, and I'm enjoying, the meeting that's been set up here, and it's been a lot of folks already, and we'll continue to have them speak. Misinformation can't go unnoticed.
Go ahead.
We
yes.
do require new hires and have for 4 years to live in the city. There was a policy prior to that that allowed them, that didn't require them to live in the city. So what the last speaker said was completely inaccurate. And as a matter of fact, the individual that led the charge for that 4 years ago was Mayor Bob Odenkirk, to make sure that our new hires have, moving forward, have to live in the city. So that's the accurate truth there. Okay.
Just, could you wait? Are you signed, we'll get to you, okay? Okay, come on up to the podium. Just state your name. We'll go out a little off here today. Go ahead.
Okay, my name's Jerry Hervey, and this is the thing. You're requiring officers to move into the city. How long do they have to be here? You should be here permanently. If you don't live in this city, you don't work for this city. Is that right for me to take a 6-figure salary and pay my taxes in a whole nother city? That money should be recycled into the infrastructure of Joliet. This is why y'all are constantly asking for money. You should have to live here for good. If you don't live here, don't work here. Good Lord, it's not that hard.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Minerva, can we just get to the people that have signed up first, please, and then we'll get back to the questions, okay? Thank you. Karen?
Melissa Boatman.
Again, just hold your comments if you already spoke, and we'll get to you after everyone that has signed up or has not talked yet, okay? And then we'll get back to the questions. Thank you.
Let's see. Good afternoon. My comments are about
Just state your name, please.
Melissa Boatman.
Melissa Boatman. Thank you, as I thought.
My name's Melissa Boatman.
We spoke a couple days ago.
Yeah, we did. We spoke a couple days ago, and I called you in regards to actually my other thing that I'll probably talk about later.
That'll be another meeting.
Another meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. And this one I have some I don't know, I guess it would be suggestions for the reform that the progressives gave. I'm not associated with the progressives, but I got a copy of it. And like number one, let's see, on like this page right here, number one on this page, it says ban chokeholds. Chokeholds have been banned in Illinois since 2015. So that probably, we could probably X that one off. And then moving down the list, increased training on de-escalation. I agree with that. If they could beef up the training, that would be great. There's also something called verbal judo. In an updated version, you could learn to recognize lies, inconsistencies in statements and subjects, and then you can phrase your position as an officer to de-escalate the situation. And sometimes there's hostility coming in, out the gate. So, let's see, moving right along. Number 3 is already a constitutional mandate. And then, let's see, number 4, I said no, and then please see number 1, because, okay, exhausting all alternatives before shooting, it's kind of like, the only time an officer is not required to warn is and I got this from a police officer, a cop friend of mine. So, the only time an officer is not required to warn is if the suspect is already in the act of killing another person. Like, say if they drive by and they see somebody already shooting somebody, they don't have to warn. Because in that situation, warning more than once would kind of be spinning your wheels. So, the difference is if they got a call for a situation versus passing by, and if they were passing by, and they seen a weapon, a cop would probably unholster their weapon and repeat, drop your weapon, on site. So they already do that kind of stuff. And then number 5, the blue wall of silence must go, but sometimes the city can't do anything, and that's just how, the government, it's kind of how it works sometimes. It's a union issue, and the city can make resolutions to restrict the union's ability to protect officers and stuff like that, but that authority might come from the state. So, coming to the city, they might be barking up the wrong tree here. Illinois and Michigan have really strong union holds and protections, but when it comes down to it, the average cop, they need their partner's protection, And like in the neighborhood, snitches get stitches. So we don't want anybody to be scared. You know, we don't want the cops out there being scared, making decisions, and they're scared and stuff. So that would probably protect people. But, you know, I don't know. When I first started coming here like a year ago, I kind of thought there might be, you know, a much bigger problem with police brutality. But honestly, there's over 1 million cops in the country right now, right? And I'm not trying to minimize anything, but there's probably hundreds of misconduct cases every year. Still too many, but maybe all cops aren't so violent. And if all people aren't bad, all cops can't be bad either. And let's see, number 6, ban shooting at motor vehicles. That's protected by the court for cops, because the second most dangerous weapon is a vehicle, and windshields actually have safety glass. And it's kind of like a ballistics thing, so if you're into ballistics, you should know that even when fired straight at, the bullets curve downward. So, you know, it might not be so fatal, or not. Number 7, let's see. The best experts on what cops can't do are the bad guys. And so sometimes, and I got this from a cop, there's probably maybe a 50-50 compliancy rate. And some people they're upset, they're tears, they're hostile when encountering the police. But a lot of people don't understand that verbally assaulting a cop is a crime in most jurisdictions, and using profanity against a cop is a federal crime. And so actually, you know, most of the time the offenses, those aren't processed, but, you know, those laws were made when profanity was taboo. So am I done?
It's your time.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, my dear.
All right.
Who's next?
That was the last speaker.
That was the last speaker. Okay, who has not signed up or who has not spoken would like to speak? You can, but I want to get to all the speakers that have not said anything. Is there anybody here that has not? You, sir, in the back? Okay, thank you. And then we'll get to the question. Minerva, I've written down who's next with the questions.
Hi, my name is Nate Schultz. I'm a college student. I actually just graduated from Joliet Central last year, so I've been here my whole life. I just gotta say, I was really shocked to learn that we don't have body cameras mandated by the police department. You know, that really seems like the number one most, you know, effective way to hold police accountable for their actions, and it doesn't really make sense that we wouldn't have any. Especially considering the fact that, as others have pointed out, the budget's gone up $10 million in the last 8 years. So it kind of makes you wonder, I mean, what is that budget going to that's like objectively more important to the proper policing of our communities than body cameras? And I also understand that the Inspector General commented saying that he thinks we couldn't afford body cameras, but, you know, considering that massive increase in the budget, I just find that a little bit difficult to believe. Again, I mean, from what I haven't, to be fair, I have not done an enormous amount of research in the exact, you know, funding and the exact cost it would be, but from what I understand, it wouldn't be that enormous a part of the budget to include body cameras. And like I said, it would be just enormously important and enormously efficacious of a way to actually, you know, keep our communities policed the right way. And that feels to me like the number one issue we should be addressing here in, you know, these talks of reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that has not spoke yet? Like to come up, please? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ariana Schuler, born and raised in Joliet. I'll keep it short. I didn't plan much of anything. I wanted to let my peers here shine and say what they needed to say. Obviously, body cams, it's a huge issue. Everyone knows we need it. It's very obvious. The budget seems to be large enough that body cams, you know, should be able to, we should all be able to do that, right? My other thing I was thinking about is we as a society put so much on police officers, right? We expect them to come out to so many different types of situations, to deal with so many types of different people from all over. So I think one of the most important things, other than body cameras, is more training or having social workers, mental health professionals that can work with police officers to make things safer for, people who are having mental health issues, say someone with bipolar disorder who's having a manic episode, someone with schizophrenia who's having a break with reality. How is a police officer going to deal with that effectively? Because they are not a mental health professional, so they cannot. A lot of times it just ends up being a dangerous situation, not only for the police officer, but, for the person involved. So yeah, I really think we need more training all around for our police, and, we need more mental health professionals working side by side with our police officers. That's all.
you.
Thank you.
Last call. Anyone else that did not speak yet? Okay, the first one, they had their hand up.
Somebody back there.
There's somebody
Oh,
back
I'm so
there.
sorry. I looked over there, didn't see you. Like I didn't see the mayor earlier, so I apologize, Mayor.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Emily Cahill. I'm here to speak about bringing harm reduction services to the city. This has been an issue for decades with overdoses. And here recently, there has been a huge uptake because of coronavirus in the overdoses here in the city, the county, and the state. And I'm hoping at future meetings that we can bring this issue up so we can help people find their clean date instead of finding their death date. So with that, I am done. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Is that it? Did I miss anybody? Okay. First one they had the question was Minerva.
To add to the police reform, they need a psychiatrist because their middle state is not here. And you see that in the aggression. I know they work with bad people, but you work with good people, but their mental state is not there. So they definitely need a psychiatrist to keep up with their mental state. And another thing, I don't want no police reform talking about, oh, how to treat people. You know how to treat your mama. You know how to treat your kids. You know how to treat your neighbors. So I don't want to hear that I need training to know how to treat people. You know how to treat each other. They know how to treat fellow officers. So stop it with the training of what to do. That's over. Done. Over. Treat people like you want to be treated. That's just the bottom line. Treat people like him, he would treat you. He should treat me the same way. So I don't want to hear that training stuff about how to treat people, because you grew up as a child. Your mama taught you how to treat people. There's no class that can teach you how to treat people.
Thank you, Minerva. Next one was Suzanne. Yeah, you had your hand up. I wrote down everybody who had a hand
For
up for a
Melissa
question.
Boltman, whose friend Bruce Carter was killed by the police over a year ago, I just want to let her know that some of the things are into the proposals, irregardless of Constitution, state law, federal law, they're written in there because there's evidence they are not being enforced locally. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
And one more thing I want to say. I'd love to be on the police and fire board, actually. I would love to be that person for the public. Furthermore, I want to say that, I don't know, I'm going blank and I won't get another chance, but thank you all. The writers of the proposals, the original proposal and the exhaustive proposals that they worked together, would be happy to sit down with any union, any lieutenant, sergeant, police chief, anyone, to get it just the way that the public is happy with and that you guys are happy with. I know they'd be overwhelmingly happy to donate their time and to sit down and work together as a team, not us against you, but together as a team. So if you do have my contact information, and we can make that happen, okay?
Okay. Thank you. And then Candace had her hand up, and she was the third person.
I actually just wanted to clarify, I believe what Melissa Boatman had is the pastor's reform, so she wasn't reading off of what everybody else is looking at in case there was any confusion. And also, would it be possible to get the people that are new faces to us, can we not just get their title, but their name as well?
Who are the folks you're talking about?
The-
That are sitting here tonight?
Yeah, the officers that are here.
Oh, okay, this is Deputy Chief Daryl Gavin, Deputy Chief Risotto. Did I say that, Risotto? Now, over here, we have Deputy Chief Mike Batis, and then we have Chief Al Rochner, our city attorney, Sabrina Spanos, and over here, we have Chris Regis. And then we have Councilwoman Reardon, and Councilman Duck Dickinson, Councilman Hugg, Councilman Morris, and myself, Councilwoman Quillen. Is that, anybody else, did I miss? We're all good? And then, of course, Karen Mackley is our lady who's taking the notes for us. Okay, so I met with the deputy chiefs and the chief the other day. I'm sorry, go ahead, I didn't see you, go ahead. Come forward, please.
I know I might be hard to see in the back. But first, I'd like to mention that even if the measures, such as warning before shooting and not using chokeholds, are already on the books in some fashion, who is to say that the rules are being followed? How many times has somebody ran through a stop sign? How many times has somebody turned without a signal? Those are rules. People don't follow them, though. I reiterate here that many of us are here about accountability. And I would like to circle back to proposal number 9 regarding a 3-strike rule. I feel like that really drives the point home that this proposal set is about accountability.
Okay,
also,
may I just say something?
Mhm.
We are going to address each and every one of these right now.
Yes.
So did you want to say something then beforehand, before we start taking these all apart?
No.
Okay.
No. I'll continue.
So you know. I know a lot of people didn't know that, but that's why you all have a piece of paper with all these proposals on it. Did anybody miss getting that paper? Okay, you have, want to come up, you can get this one. Anybody else in the back? Karen, do you have an extra one? Or Candace, do you have any extra ones for the young lady in the back? There's 2. You have some extras as well? Okay.
Also, reiterating back to Minerva's point about knowing how to treat people, I'd also like to mention that I can only imagine that being a police officer is a difficult and dangerous job. And I don't think many people sign up to wear the badge without knowing what they're getting into. And some of that is making tough decisions in the moment, figuring out whether or not it's life or death, and that it might come down to pulling off your partner, pulling off your buddy if he's doing too much. People know what they're doing, and even if it means doing something that might get you in trouble when you're back at the office, if it's the right thing to do, you should be doing it. You know how to treat people. Lastly, I'd like to say for the Citizen Council, I personally volunteer to be a part of that. And I also urge the council to ensure in whatever fashion is possible, I don't know what authorities you guys will have over it, please ensure that there's actual representation on there. Let it be some young people, get people of color, get people from poorer communities. Different backgrounds have different perspectives, and different perspectives have different inputs. So please, make it be representative.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to get started here with the reform proposals, and the first one is the city of Joliet has increased the police budget by over $10 million since 2012. Even as Joliet has consistently and had less crime than the state and, let's see, my glasses fogged, excuse me, national average, we are calling for a 50% decrease in the police budget, $30 million, with the savings to be reinvested into our community. This reinvestment should be into places such as schools, over-policed communities, and infrastructure specifically. Okay, I will take the school thing. That is a school board. People are taxed. You have your school tax on your taxes. We don't have money for the schools. We are not a taxing body for the schools. So back in the day when riverboat gaming revenue was very, very fat, money was given to the school districts. But now, since 2008, we have not done that, to my knowledge. Chief, is that correct? That's what I thought, okay. So, and it's different, it's got a different government altogether. So the second one, City of Joliet must move to create an independent civilian oversight body with the power to make budget, discipline, hiring, and firing recommendations. This body should be elected or appointed from a list provided by a coalition of community organizations, and individuals serving on the oversight body should be free of any ties to the police. There should be no monetary incentive for serving on such a committee. Example model can be found here. All right, Chris, you want to take that one?
Sure. The key word in that, and just so everyone's on the same page, I did meet and discuss some things on this list with a couple people out there, and one thing that, I'm going to say everything I said to them during the meeting, the key is recommendations in there. A lot of the powers that would be on that list are delegated either by statute or ordinance to other bodies, such as the city council. So if such an oversight body was to be created, that would take an act of legislation by the city council, and the most important thing going into it would have to be a very specific enumeration of the powers and duties of that commission.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
since we're on that subject.
Yes, Councilman.
I mean, Chris, I believe that there is a way. I believe that it would benefit the city. That it's just like us sitting here now, talking, listening, back and forth. I know it needs to be acted upon, through the legislative committee and to the full council. But somehow, I think some type of board, I don't know how the members would be elected or would they be appointed or how all that works. We can work that out, I'm sure. But that would be my feel for that in order to move forward for the city, to make the city better, is to bring the community in, who the police are serving and protecting, to just get feedback back and forth. And again, just like it's been said tonight, we're not going to agree with everything. And all of us up here, we're citizens as well in the city. So I think that we need to take a very hard look at that and to see, work with the administration, work with the unions, whoever we need to work with, to bring some sort of board together. If you want to call it a board, a committee, whatever you want to call it, however we're going to get the members. But that's something that we need to act upon, I would think, expeditiously as possible. I think, and I think that would take care of a lot of these other things. At least the public would know what's going on. That we have built a relationship.
Everybody agrees that communication is important, and a big problem that the city faces, and that by the city I mean the elected officials, the city staff, and the citizens, is that there is not always communication there, and that lack of communication leads to misunderstandings. And I've told a lot of people, I'll tell anyone who will listen, it's very frustrating working here. You hear things out there and everyone's got something to say about what's going on and why people are doing it and what they're doing, but what nobody does is actually come to City Hall, where we all work every day, and come and talk to us and ask us questions about things. And
yeah, and I agree, but sometimes, I could be, my opinion is if this was already in place, I don't think we would be here this evening having this meeting. I really don't. I don't. I could be wrong, but I think that board working with, the police administration and the officers on a regular basis would have built a relationship. And a lot of the things that's happening here in Joliet, we wouldn't be having to go this route. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Councilman Tony?
And I think we got to make sure that we're being accurate about what we want to do. It can be emotional at times. When we look at number 2, and I think that's something that Chris, you might be able to address when I finish up here, disciplinary hiring and firing. The recommendations and the action of is done under state statute by the Police and Fire Board. The Police and Fire Board is not active police or firemen. It is citizens. I believe we have 1 retired fireman on there now, 1 retired policeman. Other than that, it's citizens. By law, I cannot recommend to the police and fire. I cannot interfere with that process. That is a process set up by state statute. So I don't know how we dovetail these two. Do you have any suggestions, or is it something that, how would you dovetail a committee of more citizens interfering with the process under state statute?
Well,
Okay, hang on, one at a time, please. Okay, the attorney answer.
What you said is accurate as it pertains to hiring. Hiring police officers is under the sole purview of the Police and Fire Board, and that is by statute. So it's probably not a good idea to have another board make recommendations as it pertains to hiring. The other things on that list, they probably can make recommendations for.
Okay.
Okay. You have a question? Go ahead. Please be brief, because we have a lot to get to.
Yeah, I want to be brief, but I also want to be factual, that the people who serve on the Police and Fire Board are appointed by the mayor. And it is possible for the mayor to choose to have council members put information out there requesting applicants to come in and apply. In fact, if it's posted online, anybody can apply to be on the Police and Fire Board. And although you may not want to make recommendations, it isn't completely possible for you guys to make recommendations of people who should be on the board and encourage people to apply to the board. So publicly, I'm encouraging any citizen to apply to the Police and Fire Board, and then it's a determination, I believe, of this board to confirm those appointments. So, Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a procedure for how people sit on the Police and Fire Board.
Okay, thank you.
Let me respond.
Go ahead.
And actually, I can't speak for every council member, but I'm hoping that I do speak for them. When there's openings on the Police and Fire Board, I do get inquiries from people around the city, and certainly particularly from District 1. There's 2 I recently forwarded to the mayor for his consideration. And then so there is an avenue. Certainly, if you live in the city, you need to contact your council person when there's a police and fire opening, because it is the citizens' board. And with that said, the mayor doesn't get to appoint these all on his own. It's got to be approved by the council, by a majority of the 8-member council. So it is a collaborative effort where he brings them forward. And I think the mayor would confirm that I've sent a number of people without recommendation, just these people are interested, please contact them, get their resume, and he's done so, at least from the people that I've sent to him.
Madam Chair, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying anything about the Police and Fire Board. They hire you, and all that, and that's fine. I think they're doing a wonderful job. I commend the mayor on his selections over the past few years that we served on the council as him being mayor, with selected minorities to serve on that board. I'm not talking about that board. When I was speaking of, it's I don't know what you want to call it, but people from the community, from the city of Joliet, sitting down with the police chief, administration, I don't know if a council person or mayor or whoever, and sit down and just, I'm not even saying recommend. I'm not putting what they're going to be doing or not, but it's pretty clear what they'll be doing, and that's making the city of Joliet better and working better with the Joliet Police Department. And that's it. Nothing with hiring or firing or any of that. That's the board or committee that I'm speaking of that I think need to be in place. And I say again, I believe it had been in place, we wouldn't be here this evening.
So just to be clear, you're talking about the civilian oversight body along
Whatever
with the
you wanna
police and
call it.
fire board? Are you talking about
Yeah.
two though, what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not talking about the Police and Fire Board, civilian oversight. If that's too strong of a word for the police department, it's not, I don't know. But I think we can come to some type of, and maybe that's me being naive, I think we could come to some kind of understanding that we could work together closely with a group of people. And how that group is selected, I don't know. Either elected by the people or appointed by the mayor and the council approve it. I don't know, how that happened, but something needs to happen on that. And it can be, and I believe it can happen. It can be done. It needs to be done.
So that's something that we can start working on. Okay. Yes, Minerva. Can you come up to the mic? Minerva, we're being recorded, so you need to come to the microphone so we can hear you and people at home are watching.
I want to know how many people on the Hill that sits on these boards. Tell me one person from the Hill that sits on these boards. That's not correct. That's not a minister.
Okay, I don't have an answer.
I mean, have there ever been a person on the Hill on these boards?
Well, we'll have to do some research because I can't answer that for you.
Well, that's what we're expecting.
Okay.
We're not expecting all these people to come from the west side. We're expecting them to come from the east side. We're expecting them to come to the Hill too. We're not gonna get a bunch of group of ministers. We're gonna get people. I wanna see somebody from the Hill.
I do believe Garland Mays is involved in several.
He ain't from the Hill.
Okay, then.
I've been born and raised up there. He's not from the Hill.
Okay, Minerva.
I want someone from the Hill.
Okay, well, we'll take that into consideration. Okay. Let's calm down, please. Can't hear with everybody talking at the same time. Yes, Suzanne?
Thank you so much, Terry. What we could call it, maybe that would be less offensive to cops, is like a citizens review board. I think that's like a more milder term, citizens review.
Right, that's what I said. Okay. Yes, Jerry?
Thank you, Jan. So, Chicago has a independent civilian review board. The police are paid for by the tax dollars. It is obvious that they cannot police themselves. They are not holding them accountable, so why are we still giving them that ability to hold themselves accountable? Let the citizens do it. Create the board and let them handle it. Any police misconduct needs to be reviewed by the citizens. They pay the taxes because it needs to be taken away from them. They are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. We have that to work on. All right. Yes, okay.
Should I state my name again?
No, I know, Melissa, you're fine.
Okay. Yeah, I was going off of a list that I got from Susanna on July 29th. She gave me 2 lists, so I probably should have started with this one. But number 2, I guess you guys are talking about the civilian oversight body, which would probably be a good idea. Maybe if that person could go through the police academy, just so that they have an idea of what cops actually do, so that they can, have
And
some...
we do offer that. Chief, do you want to announce how often we do the police academy where people can, not the academy, but the Citizens Academy? Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, we usually offer it twice a year. I can find out what the dates are. We'll make sure we get that out to everybody. I would encourage anybody in the room to go through the Citizens Police Academy.
And what's the capacity at each time?
It's right around 30.
30 at each,
Yeah.
okay.
With COVID now, you might have to,
All right, yeah, be
probably about
careful.
15, I would say, at this point, unfortunately.
Understood.
But, yeah, it's well worth going through, definitely.
Okay, thank you. So as long as you have the microphone, we're going to go to number 3. Regularly commission a survey to inform the civilian oversight body of the interactions and experiences of the citizens with the police department. The survey should be used to inform police practices as the city of Milwaukee has done. And we talked about that the other day, about Milwaukee. Chief, can you address that again, please, for the public? About the right to work.
Right now, we offer surveys on our website for citizens, and, we could also, with input, we could do mailers out to the community also for ideas and things like that. Definitely not opposed to that. With the incentive part of it, like in Milwaukee, they're a right-to-work state. There's unions here, and of course, salaries and everything are bound by union contracts, so that part of it is not possible.
Okay, number 4. Officers' use of force and disciplinary history should be made completely accessible to the public and other police departments for greater transparency. Which chief wants to take it? Sabrina, you want to take that one? Oh, the chief's going to take it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, for that one, FOIA, which is the Freedom of Information Act, and the Personal Record Review Act, they establish the rules of what can and cannot be released in terms of discipline. So we have to follow those rules, and that's what we do.
And isn't currently Congress looking at that?
Yeah, there's stuff going on right now through that.
So that comes from the top.
Correct.
Okay, number 5. Establish.
questions, Jan?
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Candace.
So state law says that only records of severe discipline, like a suspension or termination, are public, while the rest are confidential. So in that case, that would mean that the rest of the records could be made public. Granted, they're not in litigation or anything like that. It should not require a FOIA for me to see someone's disciplinary history.
Are you talking about random histories, like you just want to go randomly?
No, like if something happens, like with Doug May, we might want to look at his disciplinary history. And I think Chris Reed just said, like, it's only available for like stuff that happened in the past 4 years. I don't know, I'm not versed in that, but I want to know what kind of officers are on my police force in my city, and they're not going to be in that database if they don't have any disciplinary action.
Okay, thank you. How do we deal with that one, Sabrina?
As the chief stated, I mean, we follow here in the city, I mean, any public body has to follow the FOIA statute as well as the Personal Record Review Act, which specifically states that we cannot release any disciplinary records beyond a certain date amount of time. So that is accurate what Mr. Regis told her.
Yeah, it's a personnel issue, and in any job, you have a personnel issue. If someone leaves for whatever, we can't, say for example, a hospital, okay, somebody leaves unexpectedly, and the next job wants to know their personnel file, you cannot release that to the next job. Yes, Jerry? We need to get you to the microphone. Remember, we're being recorded. Can't hear?
If I'm not able to prod into the history of somebody, let's say they leave the police department for whatever reason, that's just opening the door for them to go to another police department and do the same thing. Like, where do we draw the line?
Jerry, what they will do, though, they do background checks beforehand.
But their police personnel is not a part of that.
Daryl, Gavin, do you want to take that one about the background checks when we hire somebody from a different department?
Yeah, typically what happens is, and I'll use an example we just had, another PD we're doing a background on a former officer of ours. So what they'll do is they'll call us and ask to come see that person's personnel record. They'll have that person, that former officer, sign a waiver allowing us to show him their personnel record with all their discipline history, et cetera. And then they'll come over to the police department. I'll sit down with them and we'll go through the records and their discipline history together. That's how it's done now, but I know Congress is trying to establish a database where all police misconduct will then go into that, and that will be open to the public, I believe.
All right, that'll work.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Daryl. Okay, number 5, establish a team of mental health professionals and social workers to be incorporated as first responders in cases of suicide intervention, overdose, and other mental health crises. Models of this exist in Eugene, Oregon, and to some degree with the LAPD Mental Health Evaluation Team. Additionally, require annual mental health assessments for officers to be conducted by a third party. Chief, do you want to address that one? We talked about that the other day.
Right now, in our police department, Marty Wunderlich, she's a social worker that works with our police department. She's been with our police department for over 20 years. Marty heads up our peer assistance team, which is much like what LAPD does with their mental health evaluation team. That team consists of 13 officers and 9 civilians, employees. This program is set up to help first responders deal with personal life issues and other struggles relevant to working for the police department. Assistance by this team is provided in the following areas. What we do, critical stress debriefing. So if you're on a scene where, say a small child is murdered or killed, we sit together and talk about it for their mental health, stuff like that. Family issues they go over. Also substance abuse, mental health issues, and also when officers leave the department, just adjusting to civilian life as a retiree. Police officers also can seek any assistance that they need anonymously, which is really important. We also have an early warning system where we track officers' behavior, and then we as an administration can send them for the help that they need also through that. I also have a statement from Marty Wunderlich. She couldn't make it tonight, but she did. She wanted to answer what this question is saying as a mental health professional. She said licensed clinical social workers are both social workers and mental health workers, as you wouldn't necessarily need both. Many of us are certified alcohol and drug counselors, which she is. Such a team might be comprised of staff from other agencies, such as the Will County Health Department. She said it would be good to have the health department involved because, as it stands now, mentally ill people have to be self-motivated to initiate and continue psychiatric care. Since denial is the hallmark of mental illness, clients are frequently unmotivated to keep their appointments or take their medication, and we all know that's an issue. I would assume this setting would have to be secured to ensure the safety of the civilians, which makes law enforcement's job even more difficult. You'll need a team coverage 24/7. Mental health workers may not be able, any more than an officer, to reason with someone who is intoxicated or fluidly psychotic, and must wait until they are sober and or the psych meds have taken effect. I guess I don't really see a problem with regular mental health assessments for officers. I think that's important. The money to pay for that, for a competent psychologist to administer and interpret the test is very important. And then also, you could have the greatest team responding to a crisis, and if the resources aren't there to follow up, where does it get you, is a question. She said there's a serious shortage of psychiatrists and inpatient beds for the mentally ill right now. The ER is a revolving door, unfortunately, for these cases. Case management, social workers, to make sure that the needed services are secured and appointments are kept, is practically non-existent. So they're having their own issues also, but we both agree that it's very important to have their help in all these situations. And like I said, she's been employed by our department for over 20 years, and we use her on all those types of incidents, so everybody understands.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Suzanne had her hand up first.
If this was implemented, I want the chief to answer this. Would Eric Lurie be alive today?
Okay, we cannot comment on that case because of litigation.
Would people be alive today that have ingested drugs if this was implemented? Would anyone, the general person on the street that's ingested too much drugs?
I mean, I can't answer that question.
Suzanne, that's really not a fair question. No one can really answer that. Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, I want to talk about the warm handoff program the county offers. This allows people to turn their drugs in to police departments in exchange for help. Joliet police are not included in that program, so I would encourage, there are a number of Will County police that, different communities that do work with our sheriff's office, so that would be one of the reforms that I would ask you guys to consider or to add. It's a simple program working with our sheriff's department, and then yes, in turn, they work with Kathleen Burke with our health department to make sure those individuals are getting the help that they need. I do think partnering with the health department and the mental health services there is extremely important. Will County has worked very hard to decrease our opioid deaths here. Also, as far as the beds being overrun, I just totally disagree. The Silver Cross Hospital opened Silver Oaks, which is a mental health institute, and they do help with outpatients. So there are services here in Will County, and I would encourage our police officers to create a process that instead of handling in our jails, that they do get people to mental health counselors and to the services that exist today. Thank you.
Thank you. Candace?
So the example that I listed there, I don't know if you guys looked at it, it is about a program in Eugene, Oregon called Cahoots, Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets. They've been doing this since 1989. So I'm finding it hard to believe that this is just not a good idea. At least 25% of people killed in police encounters are suffering from a serious mental illness. Eugene isn't the only place that has done it. Denver, Oakland, Indianapolis. I'm speaking about calls that are related to addiction, disorientation, some kind of crises, or even homelessness that don't immediately pose a danger. And I'm not saying that these mental health workers are going instead of the police. It should be a team because, you know, it is still a call. Now, this program that I'm talking about, Cahoots, they responded to 20% of all the calls in 2018. And their program, comparatively, cost $800,000 to run as compared to the $58 million budget in Eugene. So that's just some food for thought there.
Thank you. Anybody else on that? Any questions?
Got somebody back here, Jen.
Okay, thanks. It's kind of dark in there.
I just have a comment about the social workers. I know the chief said that they work with the citizens, or if there's an issue, a crisis, and they work with the staff after. But what about the social workers getting involved with these officers who have complaints on them, who clearly have some aggression issues and probably mental health issues themselves, and they're on the streets? So when they're getting multiple complaints over the years, over their course of employment, why we need somebody to work with them. We need somebody to take them aside and say, hey, look, this is the complaint, what's going on, before we put them back out on the streets. Because that could alleviate a lot of problems as well.
Thank you. Yes. State your name, please.
My name is Christine Bright. I'm a Joliet citizen. I have a question. Why can't we train a few officers, or make sure there are a few officers on every shift that are trained in mental health crises? This is happening all over the country. You pay them at a higher scale to go get trained in mental health, so they know how to handle people who are schizophrenic, or people who are autistic, or people who need help when they arrive, instead of getting brutal, as we've seen all over the country.
Thank you. Okay, Deputy Chief Gavin, I'm going to take number 6. End the policing of broken windows offenses by deprioritizing or decriminalizing offenses such as homelessness, loitering, and disturbing the peace.
The broken windows theory is one of the main components of community policing. It's basically what established neighborhood policing and community policing was the broken windows theory. The majority of our citizen complaints are either for traffic in a neighborhood or nuisance issues, which would fall under broken windows issues and complaints. That's easily our number one complaint by citizens of the city of Joliet. Not doing anything about those would, in my opinion, do more harm than good. We'd have a lot more citizen complaints, and then we wouldn't have anybody out there that was actually enforcing those nuisance and quality of life issues. I don't know, do you have anything for that too, Al?
Al, you were an OPT officer for how long?
Yeah, I was for 6 years, I think it was, over at the cathedral area, one of the first officers. And I can, I can go over one issue we had at Pershing School there. You know, the kids were climbing on the roof and they were doing graffiti. So as far, you know, instead of making arrests, you know, which is what community policing is more, trying to find an alternative to arrest, okay, especially young kids when they're doing issues like that. At one point, the thinking was, what could we do to stop the kids from climbing on the roof? So I worked with the school and with the city, and we put up some fencing that was too small for kids to climb up to that point, so they couldn't get on the roof. And the interesting part was, with the broken windows theory of thinking, you know, it started with graffiti, but before we could put the fencing up, those same kids broke into the school through a window up high and stole a bunch of items out of there. So once we put the fencing up, it solved the problem. So I think some quality of life issues, you know, there's different ways people think what the broken windows theory is. To me, it's looking in the community. You know, to have a crime, you have to have a victim, an offender, and a location. Now, if you clean up the location, you're not going to have the crime in that area. Okay, if you have proper lighting, you have proper coverage. You know, for, like, say, a business has their a bank. We've had bank robberies because trees were growing too high over windows, and that makes the bank an easy target. So, to me, cutting the trees down is part of the broken windows theory. So it depends on how you look at it. It's not a bad thing, but if it's done properly through neighborhood policing, or, community policing, it's done wonders for the city here. So it's a very good program as far as that goes.
Thank you. Okay, question? Oh, you're doing your hair. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
So my ultimate understanding and interpretation when it comes to the broken windows theory is that the more that the police tries to enforce these sort of minor offenses, like the deputy chief mentioned, of kids just graffitiing up on a school roof, then the more likelihood of more major offenses such as, let's say, murder would go down. If we do look at the statistics, that does seem to be accurate, but for the community as a whole, that has actually led to a more serious problem of policing, where people will oftentimes get arrested for example, disturbing the peace. An example was several weeks ago, where residents of Joliet held a peaceful protest on an intersection, and four of them were arrested for essentially disturbing the peace. We were peacefully protesting and following our First Amendment rights. We weren't trying to actually cause any actual harm.
Thank you. I will say back in the 90s, we had, my husband was on the NOPT Police Department. He retired in 2009. And at the time, he was head of the gang unit, but then he was in also neighborhood policing. And it does work, because when the policemen are in the neighborhoods all the time, they get rapport with the neighbors and the people that live there. And the murder rate went down, and there were people that trusted the police, and they had a rapport. And then when something would happen, like a crime, there was no hesitation. They would go to the police officer and say, I know who did this. And that happened many, many times. So it does work. Yes, Candace?
So in theory, neighborhood policing is great when it works. I can say personally, I rarely see cops in my neighborhood. I couldn't be sitting outside for several hours and I wouldn't see a cop drive past my house. And so I think the situation that the chief described, I think that is an effective use of broken windows policing, so to speak, because that remedied an issue that didn't, without escalating it. But a lot of neighborhoods are policed so aggressively that people don't trust the cops. And, we should be putting these resources into community programming and doing things like building a better relationship with the cops, because when I was growing up, I had a cop that lived across the street from me, and I felt safe. I could go to him for whatever. I think this speaks to the relationship that citizens have with the cops. If it's enacted like the chief said, fine, but when you're just it feels like intimidation sometimes when, if I'm on the east side and I'm at someone's house, the cops are just kind of cruising past. No one ever says hi. No one ever gets out of the car and says, hey, you guys doing good? It's just kind of it feels like an ominous presence at this point.
Thank you. Okay, ban the use of all chokeholds and neck restraints by police officers. Additionally, require extensive training on de-escalation techniques during academy and throughout their careers. Chief, how long has the chokehold been banned?
I mean, it's been in, it's not, using the word ban means it can never be used, and that's not the proper word, but it's been in our policy since I've been on, since 1991, and the policy reads, a police officer shall not use a chokehold in the performance of his or her duties unless deadly force is justified. So, if the officer is being murdered by someone, it's as a last resort, it can be used. So you can't just ban it altogether, but they should not be used in the performance of their duties. So that's how we have it written. Now, also, all of our officers do receive extensive training on de-escalations during their academy time, and then all officers receive the de-escalation training as mandated every 3 years. And we also, starting next week, for 2 weeks, all of our officers are going to receive the implicit bias training, which is also mandated every 3 years. That starts next week. So we do that training. We try to do it more than every 3 years if we can afford to do it, and which lately we have. This is only, last time we did both was 2 years ago, and we set up again for this year. So.
Can you explain what the bias training is? For those that don't know.
Yeah, it's the you know, all of us have in our minds or in the way we've been raised some biases towards people. I mean, it's just the way life is. You know, everyone does. You know, no, it's towards all nationalities. In that.
Okay, Minerva.
No, Minerva's a big part of it.
Please.
You're right, but it's true. And this teaches you to understand what your biases are through this training and how to work through it for certain people.
Okay.
So it's an excellent training to go through.
Thank
And
you.
all of our officers are required to.
Thank you.
You see the gentleman's hand. Were you raising your hand, my man?
Okay, come to the podium, please. I will say this, though, there's a lot of prejudice against LGBT community as well. So it's not just black, it's also that and other people. And lately, the Chinese have been getting it because they think the COVID came from them, started from them, and they're discriminating against Chinese in the grocery stores and just being plain rude. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But go ahead, sir. Say your name, please.
Stringer Harris.
Springer Harris?
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
To touch a little bit on bias, bias would be more, you know, a kid going to all-white school, raised, of course, in an all-white family, then maybe policing in the heel. That doesn't work. What he knows about black people is what he see on TV, what he hear in the news, and that's not typically a good situation to put somebody in there. So to actually teach them, and I don't know how you teach somebody. I guess you're supposed to be friendly to everybody. You know, you're supposed to be nice to everybody. So, but it's true. It's hard. Some people think when black people raise their voice, they are being violent for some reason. But you can get a white person to cuss out a police, and he don't draw his gun. He don't do nothing. He just stand there and listen. He takes it. But as soon as a black person raises their voice, you have to settle down, or you finna be tased or maced. That would be bias. Illinois State Code, a peace officer shall not use a chokehold or any lesser contact with the throat or neck area of other in order to prevent the destruction of evidence by injection. As used in this section, chokeholds means to imply a direct pressure to the throat, windpipe, or airway, or any other with the intent to reduce or prevent intake of air. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Melissa.
I have a comment and a question. Actually, it kind of goes with what somebody else was saying. Actually, like maybe like some sort of community outreach could be like in order, because basically, I don't know, I came to the understanding that I didn't even understand what compliance means or how to do it. So, you know, in theory, probably a lot of police interactions probably start off on the wrong foot because people don't understand, you know, what compliance means or, you know, how to do it. So, you know, that could be an issue, or maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe broken windows or something, or maybe some police outreach. But that was my idea about that. So would that be like a, I don't know, does that make any sense? You know, like maybe officers could do like a program, maybe at like, I don't know, I was just at the Salvation Army with Will County Rapid Response Team, but they have programs there, and maybe they could show people or show the, you know, kids or something like that, you know, and it's different in every jurisdiction, you know, what compliance would be. So maybe they can, you know, do some kind of outreach and teach people so they have a better positive interaction with the police.
Okay, thank you. Is it Christy, right? Was that correct? Christine?
Back to the chokeholds, I had a question for the chief. There's two types of chokeholds. One is applying pressure to stop the oxygen from flowing to the lungs. The other is the carotid choke, which puts pressure on the carotid artery and prevents blood flow to the brain. Which specifically do we ban here in Joliet?
We ban all chokeholds.
Okay. So now this is based on the state law, strictly on the state law, Illinois state law?
We ban them through our policies, and, you know, we've done it even before there was state law on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Candace?
I guess I'm just confused on a ban if you say you can still use it.
He said the ban was not a correct word. It's used if you're going to get murdered, someone's going to come after you and murder you, then you have a right to use it because it's life or death.
The other thing I want to talk about is the training. I don't know extensively what kind of training the officers do. I know it's something every year, but there's some trainings that I found that are through like Tri-Rivers that are a little bit troubling to me, specifically the Bulletproof Mind. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. I know that it was available to officers and throughout this region, not just JPD, for at least 5 years. And it's taught by Lieutenant Dave Grossman. He is known for something called killology. And I'm just not comfortable with our officers being able to take something like that. If you guys want, I can get you guys a copy of the actual tuition, what's the word I'm looking for? Curriculum, thank you. It's troubling. And so I don't know what other classes are offered, but this one is like, it's almost like conditioning.
Okay, hang on. Chief, has any of our department gone to this Bulletproof Mind thing? Yes, we have?
I'm sure we have through the years, yes.
Through the years?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it's not just our department, the other departments have gone as well?
Right, it's through Tri-Rivers, you said? So that's, yeah, all the departments.
Right, okay. It's all the departments around.
Yeah, I know.
But that's,
we're
no,
talking
I
about
understand.
Joliet.
I know what you're, don't. Okay, thank you. We'll have to look at, get the, you want to make a copy and submit it to the clerk, and then we can make copies later. Thank you.
Jan, actually,
Yes.
and actually, one more thing on the, with the chokeholds, our policy actually is written exactly off the state statute, 720 ILCS 57-5.5. A is the exact wording that we use in our policy, so.
State statute. Okay, thank you for that. All right.
He's got it
We
back
got two
at
more
us,
questions.
too.
Okay, hang on. Who was first? I don't know.
We got it standing, but he's there.
Okay.
This would be a question to the deputy chief, where you mentioned about how chokeholds are ultimately not allowed except in if threat of life of the officer, and I'm assuming another person is there. Does the documentation provide clarification about what threat of a life means?
I think he answered that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I can't speculate on what one person believes in their life is in danger. It's going to be up to them, you know, to explain that in a court of law or wherever. You know, it's up to you. You know, someone larger than you could overpower you, but not be able to overpower me. I mean, it's going to depend on the person and the situation. You know, I can't say everyone's the same.
Okay, Susanna, there's a person behind you, and then you're after him, okay? Is it Suzanne or Susanna? Okay, thank you.
All right, I got a few thoughts and questions regarding this one. First, I'd like to just point out that I think it was the frequency of 3 years that you said you have to go through the implicit bias training, correct? I know I work private sector. I work not for the public at all. I have to go through a training that does address implicit biases every 6 months. So I do think that the frequency of 3 years might be something that, whether the proper channel is, might want to look at, because like I said, I go through it every 6 months. That's 6 times the frequency. Lost my train of thought. Oh, what was said about de-escalation techniques? I feel like we spoke a lot about implicit bias training, but what sort of de-escalation trainings are used every however many years? Frequency and content?
I mean, I can get you the curriculum for that instead of just speculating on it. So if you want to give me your information, I'll make sure you get that, what the exact training is. Now, when I say every 3 years, that means in-person training like we're doing here. We have a system, it's a Power DMS, which goes over all state laws and all training that we do every year, but that's on the computer. So we do it more often than every 3 years, but by mandate, the in-person stuff. So we do it more often, I guess is the best way to put that. It's just not in person, it's through the computer where you take tests and stuff after you read all the material.
Okay. All right. And you said that the chokehold policy for JPD is written directly off of state policy?
Off of state statute.
Okay. Are you aware of any suggestions to strengthen what JPD does beyond state statute? Because just copying the state, it kind of feels silly to have the policy as ours. Is there anything that people have come forward to recommend you aside from that in the past versus these proposals?
Not personally recommended to me, no.
Okay. Nothing you're aware of for the entire department, not just you as an individual?
No, nothing that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Susanna?
Back, it was interesting what the chief said about the threat of deadly force, or the feeling that you are that you're threatened, your life is threatened, is subjective to the officer. So what I want the chief to answer is, can you see how that would be problematic with an officer that's under extreme mental duress? Maybe he has family problems, maybe he's been drinking on the job, maybe he's been doing drugs on the job. I'm asking you a direct question. Do you see how that would be problematic? And a ban is a complete ban. You don't use it at all. At all.
That's correct, and that's why I said we do not ban it. I explained that when I read it to you. And
do you see how it could be problematic?
Suzanne, let him talk.
Yeah, let me answer. But like I said, now, if an officer is involved in that situation and uses deadly force, they are immediately taken for a drug and alcohol screening. So we would handle that issue as it comes for that reason that you're explaining there.
And then, so say they test positive for drugs, then what happens? Because there have been officers that tested positive for drugs and there's no discipline.
Then it would go through the discipline process.
And then they're found.
It depends on what it shows is what they'll be found.
Yeah,
You have to go through the process.
It's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate for the city of Joliet.
Okay, thank you. All right, require the use of body cameras for all officers. Well, we just got all the police cars equipped with the cameras in the cars because for the monies. Wait a
Jan, I
minute.
think we have one more question.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you gotta, sorry. I can't see at the doorway. Your name, please?
Trinity Allen.
Trinity.
So I did want to say, going off of what Susanna said, in that case, the ban or whatever you want to call it is useless because obviously it's the officer's word over anyone else. And when that happens, say they did test positive for drugs or alcohol or whatever, and say they did use a chokehold and there was no really threat to their life, that person is already dead. So what do you do in that case?
Well, they'll go to trial.
Okay, and then
it'll be up to
again,
a jury
there
to
have
decide or a
been-
judge.
There have been issues where there was no punishment after that. So what do you do then?
Say that again, please.
There have been issues or situations where there was no punishment following that. So what happens then?
I can't answer that.
Okay, then. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry, I can't answer that. Okay. So.
Jen, just let me say this.
Yeah,
I
go
mean, I know we're gonna get somewhere. We just started today.
Right.
But just because it's a policy or a statute is not gonna stop somebody from doing what they're doing. I mean, that's just what I think. You know, it's wrong for them to do it, but they're not gonna not choke somebody especially if they're on drugs and alcohol and all that. And they're gonna say, oh, it's a statute, I can't choke you. But we do need to have the policy, which the chief said we do. And by the way, young man, that's the chief, not the deputy chief. He said it a couple times, but that's okay. I just wanted to make sure he don't demote you, chief. So I know we kind of going around and around with the
Right.
chokehold thing, you know, which is very important. But we have it, what you call it, a policy, and it's a state statute. And we pray to God that no officers use it, and even have to use it in a deadly force. I don't know what else we could say or do about that.
Okay, who had their hand first? Mr. Stringer?
So to give you, I guess, an example of what they're talking about, or I think they're talking about, so you got a situation like Eric Gardner, who was choked out. The officer was found guilty within the police department, and he was fired. He wasn't brought up on charges, which he should have been, but now he has the opportunity to go to another police force. That's what we're talking, like, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So, yeah, I get it. You know, you choke somebody, you know, you can't stop anybody, but having rules in place, like, laws is meant to be followed. So if they're not following them, then you're able to discipline them. Then you're able to keep a track record of them not following the guidelines of the policy. So I think that's probably one of the issues that we're having is, hey, you can do something, but what happens after that? Getting fired is probably not enough for actually, that's not enough for murdering somebody at all. Like, you murdered somebody, and because you have qualified immunity, you get to go home for months. Like, you got officers on paid leave right now for over a year. Like, that's a paid vacation. So what we're saying is, yo, let's stop this paid vacation thing. We already know what happens. It doesn't take that long to do an investigation. Literally, it don't take that long. So just do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman in the back again. We still have 5 more to get through, people, so I'd like to end this at 7 because I know you all want to get home, but let's keep going. We'll just keep on going.
Susanna's comment regarding one man's word versus another in the instance of somebody using a chokehold and the person dying, I'd like to ask what sort of documenting JPD does for uses of force. So say an officer out in the field does use force on an individual, regardless of type, just in general. What sort of documenting does the department go through when force is used in an encounter? Can you give me like a long and short?
Sure. Definitely. When an officer uses force on an individual, they fill out a use of force. There's a document that they fill out, use of force document. Once they fill that out, then the supervisor does his inquiry into that use of force. Now, then those all go up to administration, and then there's also a use of force panel, which has a training sergeant on it, union representation, lieutenant, sergeant. They go over all uses of force, and if they find any policy violations or anything in those, then it gets turned over to the internal affairs. So there's a lengthy process for it.
Okay.
And it's all documented.
Gotcha. And is there any civilian channel to review those documents? Can we like FOIA it if we needed to? What sort of availability does it have to the public? Force documents.
I mean, you can FOIA.
That's FOIA, is it? Is that the?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next one. The body cameras. Oh, yeah. We're looking into that. They're very expensive. I'm not saying that the cost should be over lives. I'm not saying that at all. But we're definitely looking into that because we, like I said, we just got cameras in all of the squad cars and that'll be finished. Daryl, when will that be finished?
It should be finished by October.
By
Is that
October.
correct, Michael?
Okay.
Yes, we're currently in the process.
Okay,
and
Mike,
it should
I'm
be
sorry.
early Q4.
Okay.
We will have 175 cars.
And then we're working on the body cams next.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Got a lot of questions,
I know.
a lot of hands up.
Okay. Who was first? Suzanne? No,
Legislation.
Susanna, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Legislation exists that says you cannot turn off the volume on a body camera in certain instances, which is almost every instant. And it's not the body camera, I understand, that is very expensive. I think Chris Ray just said it's like the chronicling and the documenting of that footage. So it's not really the camera itself. And I did talk to Congressman Foster, who wasn't aware that the city of Joliet did not have body cameras. So the federal level might be somewhere you can look for some assistance for body cameras. The other thing I want to ask, does the same legislation exist for dash cams? that you cannot turn off the volume.
Chris, you want to answer that?
I don't know. I've never seen
Okay,
anything like
I
that.
don't either.
Because if it would stand to reason if it exists for body cams, it exists for dash cams.
Gotcha.
And I'm not quite clear. I missed a few meetings because I was in Ottawa. So Chris Regis is the Inspector General?
Yes.
And then Mrs.
She is
Spanner?
our acting, well, she's our acting, she's not acting, she's our city attorney.
Oh, I thought Chris did that too.
Well, they both work together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right.
You got another one?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Nate.
Nate.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad to hear you guys are working on that. I mean, I think a lot of these items are certainly up for, further debate, but the body cam issue, I mean, that's just kind of basic common sense, it strikes me. I would add that I think in addition to the implementation of the body cameras, we should have a system where obstructing it or ever turning it off, it should be punishable by law. You should be subject for immediate termination or even criminal charges. Because ultimately, I mean, there's no reason anyone would ever have to turn off a camera if they're not doing something they're not supposed to do. I mean, that's the reason we have them. And so, I mean, I just feel like the two of them should be going together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yes,
Jerry was first, and then Candace was after him.
Okay, Jared,
I'm keeping track.
thank you. Because I'm focused here, I can't.
Yes.
I'm going to do it in order.
So I keep hearing this excuse about they expensive. How expensive are these lawsuits we keep getting ourselves in? We talking about millions, and then you increase the police budget by $10 million, and you standing here telling us it's expensive to get body cameras?
I didn't say we weren't going to do it, I just said,
We need a deadline.
okay,
It is a process.
I can't give you the deadline today.
But I'm just saying, it's nothing towards you, Jen. I'm just saying, we have been beating this drum far too long, and we got cities that are way ahead of us. But we got one of the highest budgets in the state for police. Get it done. You got 90 days. Come up with something, because this needs to be done. You cannot ignore this. You costing us money, millions of dollars in lawsuits, all because police are not acting accordingly. If you get the video, it streamlines the whole process.
well,
Criminal
and it won't
civil.
always be, it'll not only protect the citizens, but it'll also protect the police.
That's right. So
I
we
understand.
should not be dragging our feet on this. It needs to be done. They need to be watched. They cannot police themselves. They need to be monitored at all levels. Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. Enact a three-strike, what?
Candace had her hand up. I didn't want her to be left out. Remember I said Jerry and then Candace was next?
Sorry, I forgot.
Thank you, Larry.
I want to move on.
Well, please don't rush us because we have been at this for a month and a half.
Okay,
So
if you
this
want to
is-
be
this
here
is
all
important.
night, I'm good, all
Is this
right?
not important? Is this not
Fine.
important? I just wanted to echo what Jerry said about the body cams. I can't believe that we don't have them, and there does need to be a deadline. The figure in the budget was $632,000 to get the body cams. The budget is $60 million right now. Half of that budget, I've since learned, is just for salaries. So you guys need to figure out where to move money around and get the body cams. It shouldn't have taken this long to get them. It shouldn't have taken this long to get dash cams on all the cars. Joliet is a large city. It's bustling. It's busy. This is not just for citizens, but it's for the officers too. And if $632,000 is too much for you guys, there's grants from the DOJ that you can apply for that will give you body cams, and they're actually unable to be turned off. So again, I can send you guys links to that too if you guys.
I would, give it to me, please.
I will.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Because of this chair of public safety, I need to have all that information that I can get. Thank you so much. Anybody else on the body cams? Yes.
I just have one comment, and I know you guys can't speak on this because of litigation, but she just said $632,000 for body cameras. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, my cousin's life was worth much more than that.
I'm not here to rush you. I didn't know if you guys needed to get home, so we're here for the duration. So don't take it, I want to get out of here. Okay, I'm good. Enact, are we good to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Number 9, enact a 3-strike policy for officers. Any offense that would warrant a suspension of 3 days or more would count as a strike. A 3rd strike would mean termination. Any case of excessive force is subject to termination. Chris, can you answer that one for as far as the unions and the contracts and all that goes?
I can do that. It's been said many times throughout the evening that there are collective bargaining agreements that we're subject to with the unions, and discipline is part of that, those collective bargaining agreements. So that would have to be bargained for. As far as the 3-strike policy, it was also mentioned earlier that everybody knows that in California there is or was, I don't live in California, I don't know. At one point there was a mandatory minimum, and that was turned out to be a very unpopular and counterproductive measure. And I think as a rule, remember in the 1990s, there was a push toward mandatory minimum sentencing. And the byproduct of that was you had people going to prison for very long stretches for relatively minor offenses, but it was their 3rd strike, and that's what the law said. Prosecutors do not like mandatory minimums because they are unfair and they take discretion away from the prosecutor. You're asking for a mandatory minimum for police officers. Once again, the same principles have to apply to that because all police discipline is not created equally. Also, when you're saying a suspension of 3 days or more, suspension time is very subjective. So anytime you're implementing that, you need to be very, very, very careful that everyone is treated fairly under it. And I understand the sentiment behind it, and I'm not saying that I disagree with it. What I'm saying is that mandatory minimums, as we have learned, are not the way to go to get this, to achieve your goal.
Okay, Candace had her hand up first.
Okay, so we're not talking about sending them to jail. We're talking about getting them to act right on their job. I'm not comparing it to sending criminals to prison forever. I'm not saying prosecute them. I'm saying hold them accountable, because if you get to that 3rd strike, that means you're a problem. That means you don't know how to follow the rules. I don't understand why why this is hard to understand. And like, I need for you guys to hold these officers accountable, because again, if you get to those 3 strikes, you know it's a problem. And I don't know why we need to argue about keeping cops accountable. It's not, and what you're saying about, well, we need to make sure that everyone's treated fairly in terms of discipline, you're absolutely right. And that sounds like a problem within the department if one person does this and another person does this, same thing, and they're not being punished the same way. That's a problem that you guys need to address within the department then. Because if you were to enact a policy like this, then we wouldn't have a problem saying, okay, this 3-day suspension is this level of severity, or this 1-day suspension is not that big of a deal. So that's a problem within the department then, if you guys are not disciplining yourselves accordingly. If I don't, do I make sense? Okay, thanks.
Okay, there's 2 ahead of you, Minerva, so start and then we'll go that way. Jerry, you had yours next.
So,
I see you back there. You're after Jerry, okay?
so,
And then Minerva, and then you.
so it says 3 strikes and the officer is out. Okay. That, they can circumvent that because an officer will never be suspended for 3 days and they can just get around it. They can just say, okay, we'll suspend them for 1 day. You know, the issue is accountability, period. I have 66 people that work under me. And when I went through my training, I was taught that I needed to be fair, firm, and consistent. What you do to one, you must do to all. They're not abiding by that because people are being punished for different reasons in different ways. Then it's just frustrating that there is no accountability at all. How many officers have been accused of misconduct within the last 2 years, and how many of them have been disciplined? We'll read a statement real quick. Sergeant Escada was found to have violated a Joliet Police General Order for Code of Conduct. The code indicates that all command supervisory members shall be responsible for the effects of operations of all members under them and the efficient and proper completion of all duties assigned to them. If you are holding him accountable, for the people that worked under him, how do the chief get away with not holding his team accountable? Those are his words, not mine.
Okay.
How do you get by with that?
Jerry, we're not discussing that. We're here about something else. Thank you, though.
Oh, my God.
Well, okay, I hear you. Said firm, fair, and consistent. Wrote it down. Okay, gentleman in the back.
So it was said that suspensions are not, what is the word? Yeah, it was said that, thank you so much. It was said that suspensions are subjective. Can you comment on any of the sort of things that are considered when handing out a suspension? Are there any guidelines? Are there any objective things at all at play there? Or is it just, can you long and short this, can you tell us what sort of subjective decision-making is going on with that?
As far as discipline goes, we look at progressive discipline. We look at past discipline for people who have the same violations, what discipline they were given, those violations, and that's how we come to the conclusion of what the discipline is. You know, if someone, you know, violates something and, you know, everybody in the past was given between 1 and 3 day suspension, then we have to stay within those parameters. That's how it works. That's what you do. What I can explain to you, because you asked about discipline and what we've done, I can give you last year's discipline, and if you would like that, I can tell you exactly what we've done discipline-wise in the department.
Great, give me the discipline
So,
of the revenge porn thing. I want to know what happened to every officer.
Jerry, please.
no, I didn't. I'm gonna
You're not at the
explain to you right now.
microphone. We can't hear what you're saying. It's being recorded. People can't hear you at home. Okay? Thank you. Let him finish.
Like I said, in 2019, Joliet police officers had 91,833 citizen contacts. 91,833. Officers responded to 89,164 calls for service, made 5,159 arrests, and investigated 2,669 criminal cases. In total, there were 59 complaints made against officers from the 91,833 documented citizen contacts. Of those 59 complaints, 36 of those complaints were generated internally. So that's by supervisors, that's by me, that's by my command staff. So that's 36 out of the 59. In other words, the majority of complaints against officers in 2019 were police supervision, policing their own. Citizen complaints were made in just 0.01% of the 91,833 citizen contacts. Now, as far as discipline goes, in 2019, 2 officers were fired, 1 resigned before he was fired, 12 officers received suspension days, up to 1 day up to 30-day suspensions. There were 10 written reprimands, and there were several oral reprimands also. So we do police our own, and that's what we do.
Can you give me a sense of what the average length when a suspension is given out, how long that is?
No, I can tell you though, like I said, last year there was some that got a day, there was some that got 30 days. So it depends, like I said, on past practice too. I mean, if somebody got a day in the past for the same violation, you can't give this person 30 days for it or 15. You know, you have to stay consistent with what the violation is.
Right. Yeah, I'm just attempting to echo that concern of, oh, they could just give him consecutive 2 days and then he wouldn't get the 3 times 3 day rule. Thank you for the depth there. I do think coming up and asking for the depth, whereas before I was just saying, oh, it's subjective, really does re-echo the fact that we're here mostly about accountability in our public servants. Particulars of policy, I don't really care that much about. I'm just wanting to make sure that you guys won't know we're willing to work about accountability in the city of Joliet. We can revise the policy if you guys think it might be faulty in some fashion or another. I just want you guys to know where we're coming from. Secondly, I do want to reiterate that the principles are very different. When you said that the principles must apply, this is not a life sentence. This is losing your job. If you get fired from the job, I'm pretty sure many of the warehouses around here will hire anybody. It's your job. You can choose a different job. It might be your lifestyle. You might have crafted a life around it, but you're not losing your freedom, and you're not losing your freedom forever. You're temporarily losing your financial stability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Minerva, you were next.
My question is for the police chief. You sound like you're at Gompers when Mr. Simmons was the principal about suspensions. When we're suspended from school, we don't get to do homework. You miss that. You don't get a grade, you get Fs. And if you stop with the suspension and stop paying these people, because when we go to school and we get suspended, you cannot make up that homework. When your officers get suspended, they shouldn't be getting paid. Why are they getting paid?
When officers are suspended, they're not getting paid. They can use 2 days, 2 days of their time, or 3 days. They can use 3 days of their own time. Say if they get 5 days suspension, they can use 3 days of their own time to burn, but then they're not paid for the other 2. That's through their collective bargaining agreement. All right, so if you're suspended, you're not getting paid.
Because it sounds, the Joliet Police Department sounds like we at Gompers Junior High. With this suspension stuff, these are grown men and women. It only takes one time. If I do something one time, I don't get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I get one time. And the Joliet Police Department needs to get one time. They're not children. Let's stop acting like these people are children. These are grown women and men.
Okay, thank you, Minerva. This gentleman over here, there was 2 of you. Who was first? Okay. Because the lady left, so is she coming back? Minerva, who's the lady sitting next to you?
Where'd she go?
Oh, because she was next, so when she comes back, she will be the next speaker.
Sure.
Name, please?
Caesar.
Caesar?
So, may have to refresh my memory. It's a bit hard to see from outside. Who made the comments about mandatory sentences being unpopular? I'm not sure. So, to that, I would just say that the idea of mandatory sentences being unpopular and being pushed back against by prosecutors is not the same as having an internal policy for a police board to have. As we mentioned earlier, it is the police and fire board who makes those considerations for firing any police officer. So I really just don't see the parallels here. I would argue that that is a logical fallacy known as false equivalence, and so I think those comments should be disregarded. Secondly, I think Minerva. So I think Minerva might have been confusing suspension with paid administrative leave. So I guess this question would be directed at the police chief. Could you elaborate on what, who makes the decision for putting an officer on paid administrative leave? What are sort of the conditions that would have to be met for that to happen?
You know, that is also by contracts and by rules that we have to follow for someone to be on it, and that's how the process is done.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. There's been a lot of mention of, bargaining rights with the police union. So my question then is, when does that contract end? When is it up for renewal? And further, who are the parties involved in making that decision?
Chris, you want to take that one?
All the city contracts are up for renewal right now.
Okay.
All except one.
So who are the parties involved in coming to make that contract?
The unions and the city administration.
So,
Thierry, please.
so would there be any avenue or any opportunity for the public to be able to, to at least sit in on those meetings or to be in any way involved in that process?
Contract negotiations are not public.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This gentleman here, wait, I'm sorry, this lady's here.
I think she,
Okay, well, no, he was next. He's been back over here. And
okay.
then Stringer, and then you, Jer, and then Candace. I'm sorry, that's the way the hands have been going. I'm keeping track. I want to be fair.
My name's Darion, and I just want to say to my man who is talking about the 3-strike rule, do not mix up the truth. Listen to the message. Don't try to rephrase it. The 3-strike rule was made, and the reason that it had so much contention in LA was because it was affecting people who were put in a position to commit crimes, who would leave the police station, who would leave the justice system, go home, and be in a place where they would have to commit crimes again. I don't think we should compare that to the police. The police are different from us. I go to sleep at night and I think that the police are a bit different from me in certain ways. I trust them so much, I give them a gun and say, here, go enforce the laws. So much that every time I buy a candy bar, I give somebody taxes and I think that they're gonna teach them mental health, they're gonna teach them implicit bias training. The police are not like us. To even imply that the police should be compared to that situation is just, it's misrepresenting the facts. The police, if I cannot expect the police, the people who enforce the laws, to not break their own rules, what are we doing? I go to sleep at night thinking that the police are a little bit better than me. I just hope to God I hope that y'all are a little bit better than me when it comes to legislation. Like, people have jobs. They get paid for them. 6-figure salaries. Money I might never see in my life. And why do we drop that standard? Y'all know y'all different from us. When you do something wrong, you know you're different from us. You know there's somebody that's gonna give you immunity. You know there's somebody that's gonna hear you out. It's just not fair. It's not a good comparison, and it's stating history in a way to make it help your argument. That is not the same at all.
Thank you. Now, ma'am, did you change your mind? Okay, all right. Stringer was next.
Oh, man. A young lady, Joliet police officer, has been receiving about $51,000 and $51,000 since she's been placed on leave from work 7 months ago.
Okay, we're not here to discuss personnel, okay?
Well, I'm discussing.
We're here to, well, I understand, but.
Well, he made a statement that said that officers don't get paid while they're suspended. So I'm bringing up that if this was Maury, he would say that's a lie. So.
We'll just keep it general then, please.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You have an officer who has been getting a check for $365. $3,655 every 2 weeks from the Joliet Police Department. And she's been suspended since January. Did you know that? Did you guys know that?
She's not suspended.
She's not suspended.
She's on leave.
She's on administrative leave. So here we go back to this paid vacation. She committed what, I don't know, is it still under investigation? But let my job give me an opportunity to go home and just go. I mean, you can just go on vacation after vacation and not do your job forever because of the paid administrative leave. How many of you guys are come on now, seriously. That's pretty dope, right? Yeah. Man, and then come back because all it is smoke, right? She's gonna come back to her job. She's gonna get it. Like, how long does it take? How long does it take to you to hold an officer accountable after multiple complaints? How long does it take? So officer gets a complaint. This young lady had an accident. She's been somebody died. So how long are we gonna keep pushing this? These are taxpayers. I don't live in Joliet, but the taxpayers of Joliet, they're paying her salary. How long do they have to pay her salary before she's terminated? And no one's paying her salary anymore. And I get it with the union, with all this other good stuff. It's tied up in red tape. I get it.
It's all under investigation. It's in the courts. We can't discuss it, okay? And it's been taking a long time. I get that, but it's in litigation, and we cannot discuss that for
So my next question to you.
Let's get off that, okay, please?
No, that's fine. I'm definitely off that.
Okay.
But you have another officer, and again, we're talking about accountability here. You have another officer, which is black, who committed a crime allegedly in Crest Hill, a domestic, where Crest Hill did not want to pursue these charges, but Joliet police insisted. They insisted that you file charges on this guy. They filed charges. Those charges was then dropped in a court of law. Like, these are problems that, again, I don't know if you guys see them as being problems, but the people on the outside that's looking inside, these are problems. This lady is whatever investigating. Let me ask you another question. I'm gonna sit down. Can you fire her? Can she be fired?
It's under investigation and it's in litigation. We cannot respond to that. I mean,
So let me ask the general question. Can an officer be fired? No, I just want to know, can an officer be fired?
After the trial, there should be a trial there, and if found guilty or not guilty, it depends on what is found.
Well, even if it's not a trial, I'm not even talking about this particular situation. I'm just talking about in general, just that officer that's sitting over there, cool as whatever. Can he be fired?
I think Chief said someone was fired last year, right?
All right, let Chief answer that one.
Yes, I fired 2 people last year.
Oh, 2?
Yes, they can.
And were they on paid administrative leave before you fired them?
Correct.
For how long? And then I'm gonna sit down. About.
Maybe six months.
Wow, must be nice.
That was after they were fired.
Okay.
That's like $60,000.
Yeah, so this is kind of disturbing. No, that's my favorite line. This is beyond disturbing. You know, like, you're saying that we're shelling out all of these dollars, and we don't need to name names. So he's saying that officers are being held accountable. How many officers were held accountable in the Socha case? Have they been investigated? You don't even got to name names. Have they been investigated? Have they been disciplined?
I believe it's still an investigation.
Stop. Has it been investigated? Because he said it. We're not naming names. All the officers involved in that case, have they been investigated? Have they been
Jerry,
disciplined?
you're out of order now. We cannot discuss this anymore. Please sit down. I'm sorry, but we can't. These are all in litigation and we cannot discuss. Please. I'm asking you to sit down. Thank you. The gentleman in the back again. I'm sorry, what is your first name again? Jonathan, I apologize.
For the microphone, my name is Jonathan.
And for me.
Yeah.
I wrote
Well,
it down.
You can hear the microphone, I hope.
Yes, I can.
I have a few general questions now. I think that all this has been on point because to the public's perspective, paid administrative leave and suspension ring the same, and many people probably do not know the particulars. Can anybody give me the long and short of what the fundamental difference between paid administrative leave and a suspension is?
Yes, let me feel that, Jan.
Take it.
Paid administrative leave. We live in a country of laws with due process. That's our constitutional guarantee. So you can't punish them until there is an adjudication of their legal case. But you may say, just in case they're guilty, we need to keep them off the street for now until the judge tells us what to do.
Okay.
That's paid administrative leave. Suspension is a procedural process within any department, whether it be the police, the fire, whether it be where you work. And there is no criminal charges involved, and they simply say, we've had enough of you, you're gone. Or, we need you to go home and think about this for 3 days.
Okay.
That's kind of oversimplified, but that's the difference.
So a lot of
You
it
gotta
is...
follow due process, and that's what paid administrative leave accomplishes.
Gotcha. So a lot of it is whether it's within or without the department that the looking-ons is going in through.
Right, if it's solely, completely within the department's discretion,
Okay.
that's disciplinary, and the buck ends with the chief on that, and if the chief so desires, it then goes to the police and fire board. But there's no criminal involvement there.
Okay.
As soon as the chief were to call in somebody and say, hey, he not only violated, or she not only violated policy, but possible criminal, that becomes a due process issue.
Mm-hmm.
And he would do the right thing and do that, and they'd start the investigation, they'd press the charges, they'd have a trial,
Okay.
and that person would sit on administrative leave until that due process is finished.
Okay. So given that an employee is under administrative leave, is it possible for them to be fired? Can somebody be fired if they're under administrative leave?
Anybody can be fired at any time, whether or not that,
Okay.
that firing sticks.
Okay.
It has to do with arbitration. By state law, police and fire on different issues, including contracts, are afforded for the safety of the people, binding arbitration, no strikes, for instance. So anything can happen. Whether you do it right or not is whether it sticks.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. In the back. Christine, right? Oh, okay, I saw your hand.
So Larry, I'm glad you gave us that explanation, and I'm glad you talked about due process, because I'm going to piggyback off Jerry here and say that in looking at these reforms, let's put a time on it. Let's get things done and make sure that the citizens of Joliet have due process when it comes to our interactions with the City of Joliet Police Department.
Okay, Christine, you're next. Thank you.
So back to the administrative leave subject. So my question is, when someone's put on administrative leave, if they're found guilty, do they owe us taxpayers any money back? or they get to keep the 600,000 when they're found guilty, right?
No, the law doesn't allow for that, no. So you'd have to get the state or the federal government to change the law. We can't change that law.
Can't change that one.
We can't
But I
change
thought
that
that was according to the union. Administrative leave was according to union contracts.
because it's not explicitly outlined by the law. So if you want some way to legally take money back, you need to talk to the state and federal legislators to put a law in that requires that. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, Susanna?
Oh, go ahead, no, you go ahead, I'll go
Let me get this straight, right? Officer goes on administrative
Stay
leave.
with the parameters, Jer.
Hey, I'm gonna stay within them.
Thank
Officer
you.
goes on administrative
Okay.
leave, right? What's wrong with if an officer does something wrong? We are going to take your pay until this is solved. If it is determined that you've done nothing wrong, we'll reimburse you. But if you've done something wrong, we don't owe you anything but a ticket out this door.
Chris, why can't we do that?
Because of the union.
Well,
No, that's incorrect. It has nothing to do with the union process. If you take salary from somebody, that is a taking under the 5th and 14th Amendments, and they're entitled to due process at that point. You cannot take something from them without respecting their due process rights.
So this goes back to the officers' contracts. Who are in charge of negotiating?
Does not have to do with the officer's contracts.
Okay, all right, whatever. Who's in charge of negotiating the contracts with the police department? Who is involved in that?
The city administration.
And the police union?
No. The
But
police union, yes.
is involved. So we got people that we cannot hold accountable, basically picking their own contracts. Somebody just got a 5% pay increase, and I only get 2% year over year for the cost of living. How does he do that? Am I the only person see something wrong with that? It's always fun when the taxpayer has to pay the bill. Hey, if we start making them pay for their own misconduct, I guarantee things will change. If they get held accountable where they have to pay for something that they do wrong, it'll change. The public needs to be involved in these contracts. They should not be private. It's our money. It's our tax dollars. Why are they private?
Jer, I would ask you to check with other police departments and see if the citizens are involved with their
I'm
contracts.
not worried about the other police
But I'm
departments.
just
I'm worried
saying
about
it's-
Joliet, and I want to know.
Okay.
If it's our money and we pay the money, why shouldn't we be involved or notified of these contracts or be involved? It's our money, it's not y'all's.
That's just like the nursing contract. The nurses were on strike. The public wasn't involved in those strikes or those negotiations. It was their union.
We at a whole nother level
All
when we
right.
talk about
We're
the
getting
police
out of hand
department
here,
and their
please,
misconduct.
one at a time.
Chairwoman.
One at a time.
Chairwoman, to be clear, the contracts, and I'm not sure, Jerry, if that's what you're saying, but I'm hearing this, they are not secret. The negotiation is done privately, and we very publicly discuss and vote on the final contract. Sometimes it's done by staff members, other times it's done by outside experts, law firms, who have expertise in labor contracts on the management side, the city side. So they are not secret. But no, you cannot do a negotiation like a circus.
Okay, so then do this. Defund them, right? Take the money from them and make them hit incentives and escalations to get it back. You have to complete an investigation in 90 days. That is an incentive. You have to hold officers accountable in a reasonable amount of time. That is incentive. You have to set tones for them to be able to get this money without just giving it to them. You don't just throw money at a problem because apparently they don't care when they know they don't have to pay for it. They're still going to get paid. So set incentives for them to reach this money that they're asking us for. Is that possible?
Jerry, I think what you're referring to now, it goes beyond and even though you try to bring the conversation back to different levels, they have a union. In the private sector, we have unions that enjoy the same, let me finish. Apparently where you work, you don't have a union. So you feel unprotected. That's not what we're settling here tonight. The labor union movement.
How you know how I feel?
I'm listening to you.
You don't know how I feel.
I'm listening to what you're saying.
You don't know how I feel.
All right, we'll move it along.
Jer.
All right.
Thank you. Suzanne? Oh.
So I'm not anti-union. I come from a really good union labor-friendly home. My dad was local 75 his entire adult life. My mom was AFSCME worker, very instrumental in bringing AFSCME to the Will County Health Department. So I'm not anti-union. However, when a union is so powerful that it erodes public trust and it makes it impossible for a mayor, is he still here? For a mayor, for this city council, what was that, Larry? Larry, what was that?
That's between myself and the chairwoman.
So what did I just say?
Didn't hear you. Don't start with this, Susanna.
I was.
You're getting your public comment.
Should I be happy that I got public comment,
All right,
Larry?
Jerry.
Just make your
all right,
comment.
All right, just stop.
Can I
for one
just
moment.
finish my comment then?
Yes, you could just give me a
Okay,
second,
oh my
okay?
goodness.
You can just give me a second. I said at the beginning of this meeting, if anybody was acting out or yelling or starting to talk out of turn, the meeting was going to be terminated. Now, we've come a long way. Let's finish this meeting respectfully, okay? And don't argue with us, please don't. I'm just asking you, let's just calm down here. It's getting late, everybody's kind of getting hungry and antsy. It's been a very, very productive meeting so far, the good conversation. Let's not spoil it now, okay? All right, Susanna, go
So
ahead.
when a union is so powerful that it erodes public trust and it makes it impossible for a city council, a mayor, a police chief to properly discipline their employees, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And let me just mention that while most insurances rise between 15 and 20% a year, the premiums, and with this next year, most insurance premiums are expected to rise something like 40% because of COVID. You have locked in your insurance premiums for 15 years. 15 years. COVID is going to increase it for all of us by 40%, but you have them locked in for 15 years. So I guess my next question is for Chris Regis. Are you in on those negotiations?
The contract negotiations? Probably not.
Okay, because I wouldn't consider anyone that is an ex-cop, a former cop with the unions, formerly with the unions, to be qualified to be objective in that process.
That's right. Okay. Candace, you had your hand on the gentleman behind, so.
So first, Larry, you gotta chill. You're being unnecessarily combative. I don't know why the rules that apply to us are not applying to you, because
I
you were up
stopped
here
it,
speaking out of
okay,
turn.
Candace, I stopped it, so let's move on, please.
So at first I was confused about why they still need to be paid on administrative leave. That, I guess, got figured out. But is it possible to then do like a salary reduction? So we're not paying thousands and thousands of dollars of taxpayer money while they're on administrative paid leave for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And this collective bargaining agreement keeps coming up. You guys you haven't renewed the contract since December 31st when it expired. When is that going to be renegotiated, number one? Number two, what I'm hearing is that this union is keeping the department from properly handing down discipline. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is exactly what it sounds like. And you're also not answering the question of who's involved in the negotiations. I would think that counsel for the city would be involved, but Chris says he's not. So who is it? Who does it?
I can answer that, Candace. I answered a little bit earlier, and I wasn't being combative. Sometimes it may be an appointed 3-member staff. Maybe say the city manager might appoint the head of finance in the past, who might, and also one of the attorneys to be on the city side or the management side.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, including Joliet, has gone to specialized outside lawyers who specialize in negotiating those contracts. That's who negotiates it. They then do the negotiations. They come back to the city council in an executive session, because that's what executive session is for, to talk about where they're at or what offers have been made from the other side. And of course, you can't do that publicly because then you tip your hand to the other side, right? Your strategy. And then they look for parameters and permissions from the city council, and they ultimately come with what they think is the best negotiated contract for the city, and we decide whether it is or isn't. In a straw poll within the executive session, and then if the executive session straw poll is a majority support of the new contract, then there's a very public vote on the very public contract, and that's how it works.
Do you all plan on getting a new contract before the year's up?
I would be the last person to try to predict when a contract negotiation will end. Some can go quickly and some can drag on, and that's not just here.
Is there a contract negotiation happening currently then? Because it sounds like there's not.
I'm not, you'd have to talk to the city manager on that. We would have to talk to, we would have to
I would
talk to
probably
the
say
city.
no, since we haven't had a city manager. We had interim, but now we just tonight hired a new city interim, Mr. Hawk, who worked for us before. He's familiar with the unions, with the contracts, with the city. Things are going on. As I said earlier, I feel he's a right fit for right now to get us through these troubled waters.
And remember, Candace, when you have a contract that expires,
You're
not
operating
without
under
a
those
contract.
You're operating under the old terms.
Right. Now, the new contract is based on the old contract, and then there's a struggle to make changes, and both sides must agree. If there's an ultimate disagreement, which is defined as an impasse, police and fire, by law, go to binding arbitration.
Okay, so now we're getting off the subject, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda here, okay? And enforce anti-racism policies within the department, which would involve extensively vetting even current officers for ties to hate groups. I think we addressed that somewhat. Is there some question that somebody has about that? Okay. Number 11. Now, Candace, you gave us. Oh, I'm sorry, you're back. It is hard to see because you have black outfit on and the door is black and I didn't see you, so I apologize. Just say, hey, Jan, okay?
I just have a question because I frequently find myself in protests whenever people that look like me get shot unjustly. And the last time I was here in a protest in Joliet, we were walking through the streets. We tried several thousand times to speak to the police officers because sometimes it's good to speak to the boots and not the suits, if that makes any sense. And they didn't say anything at all. No one said anything to us. They just said, I can't talk about that, litigation, kind of what y'all are doing. And I was like, fine, that's your job, like how we were doing with all today. And as we were screaming, Black Lives Matter, a cop screamed at me, all lives matter, while standing next to a cop that, for whatever reason, refused to take his hand off his gun. Now, I'm talking a lot, but my question is, in situations like that, right? And I just ask y'all to do me a favor and put yourself in my shoes. You're a young black kid going to a protest, somebody who's been unjustly murdered. That's you, screaming Black Lives Matter. A cop screaming back at you, all lives matter, while standing next to his buddy, who you've asked 3,000 times, please take your hand off your gun, you're scaring me, and he wouldn't do it. What happens? What is there any possible recourse for something like that? Because I know there's probably something to say, well, all lives matter, it's a political group, Black Lives Matter, all that, but is there any recourse for a situation like that?
I don't have an answer for you for that.
Anybody got an answer? Anyone at all?
Chief?
Yeah, I mean, if you feel that, you know, there was a violation or something, then you report it. If you know the names of the officers, report it so we can look into it. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of it, so, you know, you're asking a question, you know, that's hard to answer. But just like anything else, we have a process, you know, come down and make a complaint if you have one, and we can look into it.
Is there any, how do I say, off the books process as a former cop, where if that was you out there and you were, because there was a lot of them, there was a group of them talking together, and that was you, and you saw that happen, you heard one of your buddies scream, all lives matter, is there any behind the scenes with police where it's like, Evan, you're not supposed to do that? Is there any reprimanding on that part? You knowing the culture better than I do.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, you know, we've done that, I've always done that. I mean, if you don't agree with something or you see something that someone's doing that's wrong, you say something. Now, did that happen? I don't know. You know, it may have. But like I said, I don't know the situation because I wasn't there, and I didn't know until you brought it up.
But no, I'm not even speaking about a specific situation. I'm saying, like, that's a possibility, though. Like, you can tell another officer, hey, you can't scream all lives matter?
You can, yeah, if you disagree with it, of course you can. Why can't you?
Okay, I just want.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, yes, Candace.
So that one about the vetting process, is there one for anti-racism, or because let's take Officer Stephen Bowe, for example. He says things like, you can take the rat out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the rat. He says Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. I don't know if you guys have a social media policy, but you probably want to check on that because that's where I found that out. Or you've got Stephen Bowe, B-O-E. You've got people like Michael Pauley, who I know you guys have gotten dozens and dozens of calls about his wife. And I can't, for the life of me, think that he doesn't share her same intensely racist views. I know that you guys have gotten complaints about this. She made BBC, they wrote an article about her 4 years ago. And she's really been going crazy the past couple of months. But you have this patrol officer who's making over $200,000
Okay,
a year.
Candace, please, let's just keep this general, and this is not on the agenda, all these individual things. What
This
you're
is part of the
saying,
agenda. This is my,
well, no, not the comments on Facebook. You don't have that, here. you're talking about an individual person
I'm giving
right now.
examples of some officers that you might have that might be racist.
Well, then you have to file a complaint with the police department. That's not what
Yeah,
this
Can-
for.
But what are you doing about the
Candace.
complaints?
Candace, please, I don't know about that. You have to make a complaint so we can
I
look
would
into
love
it.
to come and sit in your office and talk to you about,
You can come.
I would
mean,
love to,
please.
absolutely.
Okay,
Guys,
thank
calm
you.
down. Thank you. Gentleman in the back. Jonathan. Jonathan, the gentleman in the back.
Thanks, Jane. I think the gentleman that brought up the response of Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter made a great point. Especially in the past 5 years, we've really seen the avenues that racial discourse takes place in change. Language has become so coded that a conversation politically about test scores is really a dog whistle for whether or not the neighborhood is black, something like that. A lot of stuff has really changed in the past few years. All Lives Matter has, in some eyes, been a political movement, but in a lot of eyes, it's also a dismissive response to the fact that Black Lives Matter. And I do want to raise the question. I know that the implicit bias training takes place at a minimum of every 3 years. How frequently is the content of that course being revised? Because everything is changing in America recently, especially in the racial department. I want to see how frequently that training is being revised.
Chief or Daryl, Chief, Deputy Chief? have a
Anybody?
Answer for that?
We typically, for example, 3 years ago, we used a different person that we're using today because the person that we chose for this year's implicit bias training, his curriculum seemed a little bit more modern than what was used in the past.
Okay.
So we typically look at the instructor and we get their curriculum before we hire them so that we can review it and see that if it meets today's standards. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. I will also completely reiterate Candace's statement that a social media policy is something that definitely needs to be looked into. One of the greatest channels to be radicalized into the far right, to be radicalized into a racist, is through Facebook and YouTube. So the sort of content that public servants are sharing on their personal pages is a great indicator as to whether or not they are taking this implicit bias training seriously, or if they're just looking to pass the class. Because I can definitely guarantee, as somebody that's taught classes before, that there are students that just look to pass and they don't take any of the content to heart. So I will definitely reiterate the focus on social media in this implicit bias spotting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Christine, you had your hand up? You'll be next, Minerva.
So also to Candace's point, my children are black. So if there are officers out there who are expressing their racist views publicly, I'm afraid for my children.
Thank you. Sorry about that. If anybody has any specific people, you really should file a complaint with the police department, anything you see. I know that it is monitored, but maybe not all the pages are monitored, so you have a right to add that complaint. Minerva?
My question is to you, Mr. Gavin. Are you going to tell me that you need a class to know how to treat people?
No, you don't need a class to know how to treat people. But it has been scientifically proven that most people have an implicit bias from the way that they're raised, from the neighborhood they grew up in, from the community that they lived in, from a situation they may have had in high school, that you develop these over time. And so what the implicit bias training does is it's supposed to open that officer, open yourself up to the fact that you do have these biases and you have to deal with them, because you do deal with people of all races on this job. It's probably in most jobs nowadays. We're a very multicultural society, as I'm sure you're aware.
I'm aware.
Okay, so this training is supposed to bring that fact to the forefront of these officers' minds so that they understand when it occurs and so that they can stop it right there. Does that answer your question?
It does. But I'm just gonna say this, I still cannot understand the life of me. A lot of stuff happened to black people for 400 years. 400. We know how to treat all races. We know how to treat all races with respect. And we deserve that same respect. I'm not a criminal, but if I see you, Mr. Gavin, you know what I'm gonna do? Hurry up and get away. Because that's what we're taught too. That get away from the police. Stay away from the police. You know how they is. This is what our parents teach us. So when we see the police and they say, well, why you running if you're guilty? Because we're taught things too. Chief, we're taught things too. As a black race, we're taught things too. But do we express that stuff? No, we don't. Because one thing about it, we learned how to treat people at an early age. And all this class stuff is garbage. You know how to treat people. Because if you don't, that means you're some type of racist, whether it's black, gay, or indifference. You know how to treat people. Your mother's taught you that. So stop with this training stuff and just start treating people like you want your daughter, your son, and everybody, and my son, how to be treated. Simple.
Thank you.
Stringer had his hand up quite a bit.
Okay. Stringer first.
Ernie, first on the matter with item 10, does JPD, when someone comes to wish to join the force, go through essentially a racism background check, to see, hey, have they been involved with, just enter any known hate group in existence, to try to basically just make it a little easier to weed out those who are racist from being able to have access to a badge and the equipment.
Deputy Chief Betas, have you done these background checks?
Yes, I was currently in the investigation division, and every applicant goes through an extensive background investigation, and that includes social media accounts and in the interview of all associates that we can find. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers that question. Second thing, on the matter of people having reports of officers being already having serious misconduct issues to the chief and the deputy chiefs, is there any chance after the meeting, we can kind of come to you and bring those reports to you directly, or will we have to just go through the process?
I'm a little confused by your question, but are you wanting to meet just with the command staff itself?
I would say that. Again, after the meeting, to bring in the names of all these, brings in the names and what has happened of all of these officers who have been essentially committed misconduct and have not gone reported.
So you want to bring forward new names of officers to the command staff? Is that what I'm getting?
That's not on the official. That's not being investigated right now, and I know at least one of us alone has such names.
You are more than welcome to make an appointment, and I'm sure the chief will echo these sentiments that we would be happy to sit down with you and speak with you regarding that.
Okay. Stringer?
I think we all, everybody sitting in this room, have PTSD. We all do. From the events that have happened through, George Floyd to COVID, we're all suffering with some sort of mental illness, period. And if you say you don't, that's part of that denial thing. You are. I've watched, being out here for a few weeks, the Joliet police use words like hood, as far as in referencing to go back to the hood. I've watched two white individuals in the street standing next to a black individual. And instead of grabbing those two white individuals, they grabbed the black individual. And that's caught on tape. You have racist police in this department, just like there's racist people sitting in here today. I don't know who you are, but to say that you're not, like we all have seen somebody walk past and locked our door, clenched our purse a little tighter. Like I get it, right? I get it. And it comes from what you see on TV, because you never stepped a foot in my home. You don't know how I was raised. You don't know what I was taught, but you will see the TV. And when you watch the news, what you hear is black on black crime. There's no such thing as black on black crime. Crime is crime. And a lot of times we get stereotyped because of our color. But a lot of these people, they not, like, it happens. Crime happens. And, you know, hearing things like, go back to your hood and watching some of these police officers and how they encounter peaceful protesters, it baffles me. It scares a lot of children that's out there. You know, you got police coming out there in riot gear. We're not out there with assault rifles. We're not out there with weapons. But you need to come out there with riot gear when there's women and children out there. I think that's a problem. And I asked the question, if there was 100 white people out there, would you stand out there with riot gear?
No. You know, Stringer, I just want to say something to you personally. You stood up here and said, we don't know you, we haven't been in your home. Well, you know what? You don't know us either. You don't know what we've been through. You don't know our struggles. You see where we're at right now. But for me personally, okay, I worked for everything I've ever had. Okay, everybody thinks, oh yeah, she's the rich white girl, look at her now, look where she lives. My parents didn't have a lot of money. I grew up in the south side of Chicago. I worked 2 jobs and afternoons, and I put myself through nursing school, okay? And that's what I did. And I came to Joliet because I married a Joliet police officer. And we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment for 6 years because the interest rates were so high at the time. They were 12.5%. And after we got out of that little apartment, we bought a little house, and then after that house, we bought another house. And we spent the last 30 years fixing that house up to what it is today. So don't assume because I'm white, I got all the privileges in the world, because I will tell you, I worked my butt off. No. Wait a minute, don't misunderstand me, but that's what I get. What I'm trying to tell you is that's what I get a lot. I get a lot of that because nobody knows me. It's not, but I wanted just to reiterate because of what you said. I don't know you, you don't know me.
If you took it that way, let me apologize. If you took it that way,
But it wasn't just for me, it's for everybody up here.
Again, that everybody else got it, but you didn't get it.
When I didn't get it, then I apologize myself, okay? But I just wanted people to know.
When people make that statement, I was raised on the south side of Chicago. If you don't mind me asking, what area in particular?
Roseland.
You was raised in Roseland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At what age?
How old am I?
No, what age was you raised in Roseland?
I was born and raised there. I was born at Roseland Community Hospital.
Got you. Now, we all know that Roseland, I was raised in Hazelcrest, and my best friend was white. Like, I had a big wheel, like a nice yellow and red big wheel. My best friend was white. I didn't see color. I saw no labels. White, black, those are labels. I didn't see any labels.
You know what, Stringer? Let's you and I continue this after the meeting. Okay, you and I talk one-on-one. So we can get to, because people don't want to hear any more about me, but I just had to say that. So I'm sorry if I misunderstood, but we all misunderstand everybody, and that's part of the problem. We need to come together and talk. So I apologize if I misunderstood. So yes, my dear.
Part of the problem is you guys not educating yourselves. If you educated yourself, you wouldn't have just said that, any of that. And I really want for you to check your white privilege. And I know maybe you didn't mean it that way, but that's why you need to educate yourself on certain matters. And that's what we need. I'm 17. I just graduated from Plainfield South High School. I've been dealing with this. I have good relationships with 3 cops from Joliet Police Department. That's Officer Sennett, Officer Laurie, and now retired Officer Caneller. Okay, I've had good relationships, and all of my students, I was also the president and founder of the first Black Student Association at Plainfield South High School. And all of our students and our members, all we want is a relationship, a good relationship for these cops. But it seems like Candace said earlier, it seems like it's just business, basically. That's the relationship and that's the dynamic. And I feel like there's no connection whatsoever between, especially kids in the community, and these cops. And I personally have tried to fix that. But I guess I failed because that's not the case. But what I need for adults to do, this coming from a 17-year-old girl, what I need for all of you to do, cops and everybody included, is to educate yourselves. Because again, if you would have educated yourself, everything that you just said would not have come out of your mouth. And I want you to know that. Check your white privilege.
Chairwoman, I would request that we go to the final item 13, because there are being statements that I want to hear being made that aren't directly related to the matter at hand.
Yeah.
But remember, there's 4 minutes a person at the end of the meeting too, to talk about whatever angle or topic you want to talk about. So let's finish up the agenda, and then we can move to the public comments.
Well, I don't want to rush, so
Okay.
I wanted everyone to have a chance to speak, and I spoke.
I think Jerry had his hand up.
And I'm sorry if you
No?
misunderstood me.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. Holy mackerel, 28. Okay, guys. The lines are drawn through 11 and 12. Let's write 13. Require random drug testing for officers for illegal substances as a performance-enhancing drugs and hard drugs like cocaine, and implement concrete consequences for positive results. We do random drug testing, but who had their hand up first? I wasn't looking. Minerva? Okay.
Well, since cops is dealing with a lot of lives, cops carry weapons, sometimes military weapons. The alcohol use that's in the police department is horrendous. And everybody knows that. That have never been a secret, Chief. It's horrendous. The drug problem, the people you pick up for drugs. How you doing drugs as a police officer? It needs to be more than random. Everybody in the police department should take a drug test at least once a month. A drug test and an alcohol test, because you can look at most of these officers and tell they're drunks. I'm not being disrespectful here, but you can look at an alcoholic, I can spot you a mile away. And it's a lot of alcohol abuse. And alcohol is a mind thing, and it messes you up. And these police have to take alcohol and drug tests. I take a drug test at work. The whole country is taking drug tests. Why is it not that police that carry weapons are not taking these drug tests and these alcohol tests? That's the #1 rule. Forget all 13, 15, whatever you have on that list. That's the #1 police reform is alcohol abuse and drug abuse.
Now, we do, how often, Chief, do we do those?
Yeah, the Joliet Police, we do random drug testing per policy, and the contracts dictate the procedure. We're allowed to do random drug testing up to 4 times per year, and then also if we receive any credible evidence that someone is using drugs or alcohol through complaints, then we can also send that person immediately for drug testing or alcohol testing.
Okay. Jerry?
I'm gonna kind of switch gears on this one. Okay, so when they do the alcohol and drug test, we know that y'all got that. What are the consequences if they test positive? Like, I get it, people have problems, but is there a system in place where they can get the counseling they need, get the help that they need? Are they able to reach out to fellow officers or the department and say, hey, you know what, I got a problem. I need to come off the force and get myself together. Nobody's opposed to that. Give them the help that they need if they want to keep their job, but you can't get caught red-handed and then all of a sudden, oh, man, I got a problem. You got to kind of acknowledge that. They got to kind of want to create the atmosphere that they can come to each other and identify that they have a problem and get the help that they need. What is the recourse for the consequence if they test positive for drugs or alcohol?
Your questions are twofold here, Jerry. Through our peer assistance program, which I talked about earlier, they can go through them and get the help they need as far as counseling, as far as going to a treatment program, all that stuff, okay? Then there are no consequences. They brought it up on their own. They bring it, okay? Like you said, if there's positive tests, they were hiding it from you and all those other things where there's discipline involved, then there'd be discipline, and it depends, on the circumstances. It depends on everything. It's an investigation. It all depends on that.
But this is the thing. In any job that I know in America, if you test positive for a drug, you fired. So why is it different for a police officer? If you test positive for illicit drugs or alcohol,
It's a collective bargaining agreement. There's issues involved.
so then
all
y'all
of it,
need
Jerry.
to take charge of the collective bargaining agreement. Why is this acceptable for somebody to run around here high or drunk, carrying a gun and driving a car? Like, come on now, let's be reasonable.
Candace?
I'm going to speak to things that both Jerry and Minerva said. I didn't write about the alcohol problem, but from Odekirk himself, he said, back when he was a cop, that guys would get off work and just go drink 7 a.m. So she's not wrong here. And in terms of the random drug testing, I'm aware that there's random drug testing, but there are no consequences. Thomas Vanis, Officer Vanis, what was his discipline? Or was he protected by the collective bargaining agreement?
Again, we can't talk about personnel, please.
It's public, it's public.
Well,
it's public information.
But
How
you're
do you think I
asking
know
about what
that?
discipline was finished. We can't.
He didn't get any, that's my point. That was my point. The collective bargaining agreement protects them from doing anything that would hold them accountable. That is the problem here. That's what we've been talking about for however many hours we've been here. There's no accountability.
Well, Candace, if you don't mind, I will, and I don't want to use names. The guy, just in general, if you're referring to what I think you're referring to, which had to do with steroids, right? That wasn't a lack of the chief doing his job. That wasn't a lack of anybody doing their job. No, let me finish, please. What happens is there was no all right, if you test for a certain level of what's called hormones in your system, because it's a reverse test for steroids. They don't look for the drug itself, you look for the elevation in hormones, okay? If you test for a certain level, you could be suspended or thrown out of the NBA, but not the NFL. So what I'm trying to get at is it has to be, and it wasn't, and that has to be cleaned up, and I'm sure it's being cleaned up now. There wasn't an actual specific level to be able to discipline him on. That was not a good thing. That was a horrible oversight, not for one instance or two instances, but for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. But that's what it came down to, is we didn't have a guideline, a set guideline to do it. The Olympic Committee has a different guideline, but if you're in the Olympics, you go by it, right? Mm-hmm. Has a different guideline, a lower tolerance than the NFL, which has a higher tolerance than the professional baseball. Each organization has to establish what its guidelines are. Okay, and that's what happened there. So it wasn't some kind of cloak and dagger.
We're not talking about the Olympics or the NFL or whatever. We're talking about Joliet cops.
But the same,
and I'm not
Candace,
blaming,
the same concept.
I'm not
legally.
I'm not blaming the chief for how that was handled. The reason that specific proposal is worded the way it is because there was no exact disciplinary route to take in place, and that's what I'm speaking on here. There needs to be an exact way that you're going to handle that if that happens.
Candace, there is an exact disciplinary. The problem was there wasn't a violation for lack of guidelines, lack of standards.
Well, then make guidelines.
That's what they're doing. Exactly.
Okay, I believe Jonathan was next. The gentleman in the back.
I haven't moved. Before I ask my question, I do just want to bring to everybody's attention the little statement at the bottom of the proposals that says This is not an exhaustive list and may be revised with additional input from the community at large as City Council and JPD begin discussions on police reform in our city. And being that this is the first real discussion we've had about this particular sheet of paper, I just want that to be in everybody's minds. I do really want to hit on the points that Minerva was making about alcohol. Alcohol is way more devastating than anybody ever really makes it out to be. Withdrawals from alcoholism, depending on how intense your problem with alcohol is, can kill you. It's a legal drug. You can obtain it no problem. And I have a source pulled up on my phone here that if anybody wants it, it was like the first thing on Google, honestly. It shows you how long alcohol stays in your system. And I'll bring this to the point of questioning tests, but screening beyond tests. On breath, alcohol can be detected in your breath via a breathalyzer test for up to 24 hours. Urine, alcohol can be detected in urine for 3 to 5 days via metabolite or 10 to 12 hours via traditional methods. Blood, alcohol can show up in a blood test for 12 hours. Saliva, a saliva test can be positive for alcohol for 24 to 48 hours. Hair is the only one that works for an extended period. So if we're doing tests at a maximum of 4 times a year, that seems a little bit weird. Hair, like many other drugs, alcohol can be detected with a hair follicle drug test for up to 90 days. So testing, even if we're doing it at 4 times a year, it might be a little bit ineffective. So beyond testing that goes on, what sort of screenings are going on? Because there's a lot of closet drinkers in the world. I rode the Metro Rock Island from here in Joliet up to Chicago for 2 years of my life. I saw a lot of people that got on that express train home, drank 2 natural ice, and got off the train, the tall cans. That's serious alcoholism. So what sort of screening is going on aside from these tests, which given how long that alcohol stays in your system is going on? Anybody have an answer for alcohol screenings? Because that is a serious issue that some people deal with.
I can't answer that.
Nobody? Alrighty, cool. Thank you.
Jerry?
I'm gonna see if I got this right, because I kind of dealt with this before. What he was saying was it wasn't enough of whatever it was in his system to generate a positive test to get discipline.
No. There was no standard. You have to have an
Was a
objective standard, right?
Because, yeah, I got a female who drinks a gallon of water every day, and when we give her a drug test, it comes back as a diluted specimen. So it's not negative, it's not positive, it's just a diluted specimen.
But Jerry, we don't even have a standard we didn't have a standard to line that up against, whether it fails or passes. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that's a problem.
Well, that's a problem that's being fixed now, right?
Yeah, all right, got you.
All right.
All right, any other questions about the random drug testing?
Yes, Stringer has a,
Okay, who was first, Stringer?
he's there to.
Stringer gets going first this time.
Yep,
'cause-
that's right. Gentlemen's agreement here. Okay.
Question to the police officer, deputy chiefs. Well, actually, deputy chiefs. When was the last time you got drug tested? You can answer that. It's okay. It's not rhetorical. Anybody? It's been that long, right? Yeah, the reason why I asked is I just spoke to an officer. He said he ain't been drug tested in over 8 years. So that random drug testing thing, come on, let's throw that out the window. We want facts, like for real. Like all this smoking windows, like you don't do drug tests for real unless somebody get into an accident, they shoot somebody, whatever. Like that's when the drug screening happened. I don't know if you guys policy, let me ask, do you have the drinking policy where they can drink 2 hours or they have to stop drinking 2 hours before coming to work? How do you guys drinking policy work regarding that? So if I got to work at, I don't know, 11 o'clock tonight, I can drink right now, but I have to stop by at least 8. Is that you guys' policy? What's your policy on that?
Let's see if we understand.
Oh, whoa. They understand.
Well, let me answer that.
Yeah, they got it.
I mean, I'm assuming that during the course of their duties, it's a BAC, right? It's a blood alcohol content.
Right, so that's not what we're talking about. They totally get it. Trust me, they get it. So you got 2 hours before you go to work. You can consume alcohol. You have to stop drinking 2 hours before you go to work. I'm asking you guys, is that the policy here in Joliet? And how do you make that make sense? So what do you tell your officers? Hey, you can drink up to what? Can they not drink the day of their job? So hey, it's Memorial Day. I got to go in 11 o'clock at night, but I can't drink a Corona with my guys at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Do we have a policy that says anything? That would be a strange policy.
That's not a strange policy.
If somebody were
no, that's I can show you with the I can show you
before.
Yeah,
I could chug 2 hours before a whole 6-pack.
Absolutely.
Right.
So this.
So that's my point. It's based on DAC.
I don't think you heard behind. You didn't hear the people in the back.
Probably a good thing, huh?
It's not about you, Larry.
I think that with the silence that you're getting right now, it deems a problem, right? Like I'm addressing the elephant in the room, and I'm not just talking about me.
Well, you're addressing something that they understand.
Right. So again, this is something that the citizens, everybody, that should be something that is addressed here when you're talking about these substance abuse. When is it okay to drink? Because again, I'm not going to tell y'all not to drink. That's stupid. You can drink whatever. You're grown. If you want a fifth of Hennessy, y'all don't drink Hennessy, but whatever you drink, go get it. I'm not telling you not to do that. But what I'm saying, and you're going to do it, right? Drink, do it. But drink responsibly. But the second thing is, and I won't let it go, when do you make it a point to bring up to say, hey guys, if you got to be at Newark at 11, your cutoff is at what time? Let's think about that. Do you understand what I'm saying, Larry?
Kind of, sort of, but the 2-hour thing threw me.
So again, you got, so it's certain policies in law enforcement where you can drink up to 2 hours before you go to duty. So before I put a badge, before I put a gun on, if I got to be at work at 11, I can drink all the way up to 2 hours before I have to go to work.
Before you lose me, Stringer, because my question was using your own example. Mm-hmm. So if somebody at a police,
I'm not saying that's a good policy either.
If that policy exists, if you drink that quart of Hennessy you mentioned, at 2 hours before,
right,
your BAC is going to be high even at the end of your shift.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So again, that's what I'm trying to say to you guys. If you don't have a policy, what Will County is you make a policy. I think that's huge, Chief.
Yeah, you can't have any alcohol in your system when you're at work. That's the policy. I wouldn't let you drink before in. You're not supposed
Whether
to
it's 12 or 15 or 18.
Policy.
Yeah.
So
the policy
a lot stricter than what you're saying.
So thanks, lawyer. Hey, that's what she get paid the good bucks for. So basically, they can't drink how many hours before they have to go to work? That's the question.
You're asking me a medical question. I don't know how many hours before there's no alcohol in your system. I don't know that answer. They can't come to work with alcohol in their system.
Period.
Now, somebody came up with facts and said that the alcohol stays in your systems for so many hours, correct? 24 hours at times. So how do you then do these screenings with officers coming back to work? Let's say off a major holiday where you know they're drinking. They getting foobarred, right? Out of there. Now they back to work. How do you control that? That's a huge question, and it needs to be answered, hopefully. Good luck.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jonathan?
There's a young man over here, too.
After Jonathan, okay.
I'll again bring up policy that my workplace has. Casting aside statistics like blood alcohol content, how long something stays in your system. After COVID, I have an app on my phone that I have to go check in twice a day that I go to work, saying that I've not been in contact with anybody, that I haven't left the country, this, that, and the other. And that's on my honesty. And if they find out that I'm wrong, I'm subject to this and that and the other, yeah, we're not going to breathalyze people before they show up to work per se, but what's to stop just sign a little thing saying, yeah, I'm good to go to work, I'm sober, this, that, and the other. I'm doing this every day for my non-public sector job under the penalty of my own honesty. So even if it's not like a statistical screening for blood alcohol content, what's stopping the honesty?
They do that. They sign off on all policies. They review them and they sign off on them. we do it all the time through our system, and it's electronically calculated, so it's the same thing you're saying. They do sign off on that, and they know what the policies are, so if they violate it, you know, and if we think someone's been drinking and that's at work, we'll breathalyze them, we've done it before. I mean, that's what we do.
Okay. What is the frequency on that? Because it's like
The
Stringer was
frequency
saying.
is when you see it or someone tells you something. I mean,
No, I'm speaking directly to the signing off of policy, sorry.
I could get that for you, but it goes through the whole policy system, and you sign off, and then you sign off again, so a few times a year at least. So, I mean, everyone is required to know the policies of the police department.
Okay. But I think you see what I'm getting at. I have to certify twice a day at work that I've not been in contact with people that most likely have given me COVID-19.
Can I ask
Stringer
what type of
Harris was
job you
bringing
have,
up that
Jonathan?
people could be drinking a couple hours before their shift, and there's nothing to say, nothing that they got to do right then and there aside from somebody maybe catching them. If they're drunk on the job, they're drunk on the job, you know?
Jonathan, can I ask what type of job you are or what work you're in?
I work at a bank.
Okay.
Yeah. So I work with the public, I'm not in the public sector, but twice a day I have to sign off that I've been safe from COVID-19. It's the same sort of thing that Stringer was bringing up. Somebody could be drinking a couple hours before their shift. If they're only saying that they're in compliance with coming to work policies every couple of however long, I kind of take a little bit of issue with that because it's just their cognizance and their honesty, which is part of what brought us here. That's what we're questioning is integrity. So that's what I got to say on that.
This gentleman over here. I didn't catch your first name first time.
My name's Darian.
Darian?
Darian.
Darian.
Again, black kid, I don't talk to police very much, so I'm probably gonna grill you for a lot of questions because I don't get to interact with your lifestyle a lot. As a cop, when you get to work, do y'all do blood alcohol tests? No? Has to be reasonable suspicion?
Right.
Would it be too much to ask? Okay, do you get like mental health checks before you come to work? Is there any, like, okay, man, you're about to go out there, it's going to be a wild day today, let me check you mentally, let me check your implicit bias, let me check your blood alcohol. Is there anything of that nature at all?
No.
Jesus Christ, would that be too much to ask? To give cops some forms of the checks that we give them before they go out to work? I'm not saying hound somebody for 5 hours straight, but is there no checks of those things? All jokes aside, seriously, there's no checks of those things to say, hey, are you mentally straight today? Have you been drinking today? You know that bias training that you get every 3 years, is that still in your head?
No, there's none of that.
I know I said is that too much to ask, but honest to God, I feel like we pay cops a lot. Could we get that? Is it too much to ask? Can you check them before we send them out into what y'all say is the worst job on earth?
Say it.
I'm asking y'all. Y'all make policies. Somebody say something, please.
Again, we're tied by the union contracts. We have to put that in. I know.
So, okay,
It's a
so look,
violation.
look, no, I'm not mad at that. This is your job. I completely understand
You
that.
have to work within those parameters.
There's a lot of bureaucracy and litigation that happens in this job. I completely understand. But you guys are the suits. You people are very good at speaking, right? Is there any way, any one of y'all, you included, could go talk to the union? Like, we do always promote that cops have a hard job, which I do believe in, Wack. Is there any way we could be like, let's check them before we send them out into hell?
It's to protect them as well.
Yes, to help them. We don't hate police. We would actually just want them to do their jobs. That's it. I swear to God, that's all we want. And I promise you, everyone behind me just wants police to do their jobs, and we do not mind helping them out. Just something, please keep that. I'm not gonna lie to you, that scares me a lot. I thought that was a thing that happened, that cops got checked for alcohol, that cops got checked like I do before I go into school, like that you're good. But please, please, please keep that in the back of your mind. I know it's not on the list of anything proposals, but can we have some kind of a check at the day of work to say, hey man, are you ready to do your job? Because training wears off. We've all got training for different jobs, for different things. It wears off. A lot of the things that we're taught wears off. So please keep that policy in the back of your mind.
Thank you.
Real quick.
Chair.
When we gonna do this again? Like, can we do this again? Because I know it's in the beginning, but the dialogue is needed to get and give feedback, and that's the only way we are going to correct this problem. That's the only. We can't just do this one time and then leave it alone. It has to be something consistent. I'm not saying like every other day, but it has to be something in place where we can all collectively come together, give thoughts, opinions, and suggestions on stuff, get the feedback, and see what works and what doesn't work. When can we do this again?
You're absolutely right, and I just wanted to say, I mean, are we done with this meeting? Does anybody else have anything else to say?
Oh yeah, real quick. They need to implement, if an officer tests positive for drugs, put that in their collective bargaining agreement. They cannot fight that. If you test positive for drugs or alcohol, you are terminated. It's that simple. You arresting people for drugs. Why the hell are you doing drugs?
Thank you. All right. Yes, Susanna.
I want to thank Terry, the chairman of this committee, for bringing this to everybody. I want to thank Jan for handling it as best as you could. I want to thank Doug for being here, Doug Dickinson, Larry, Chris Regis, Sherry. Some of these people, everybody really didn't have to be here, but we appreciate it. And I want to thank Lakota, because I think he's amazing. And Officer Lakota may not agree with everything that comes out of my mouth, but we agree on more things than you all here know. We're, anti-brutality and anti-racist cops, and that's it. So thank you so much for this. Again, if you're willing, we can get you with the two people. The one that started him and wrote the original 8, he has a bachelor's degree in political science. He's one of Joliet's finest, smartest, and Candace is willing to get together and talk on something. This is a conversation, and we can continue it with those people that wrote the proposals too. So thank you so much.
Yes, Candace.
I know you guys are probably sick of me. This is the last thing I think I'm going to say.
You're fine.
For number 1, we just kind of glaze over that a little bit. What I want to say about that is I know a 50% decrease is not going to happen. That's a lot of money, especially since $31 million of that budget is for salaries alone. But I just want to give you guys some figures where this will hopefully be in more context for you. The national average salary for police officers is $48,000. On the high end, it's like $74,000. The average for an officer in Illinois is $42,000. There's places like Oklahoma City, which is a high crime area with a population of over 1.3 million. They have an average salary of $57,000. St. Louis, 2.8 million people there. Cops have a national or average salary of $62,000. JPD starts their officers at $54,870. It goes to $72,644 in 2 years. And then after 3 years, it goes to $88,133. And that doesn't include overtime. And I'm looking at the budget, and there's people doing $21,000 worth of overtime. You got to cap that overtime to save it in the budget. Stop putting people on administrative leaves for 6 months. Be expeditious in these investigations so we're not paying 6 months of their $100,000 plus salary, because most of the cops are making well over $100,000. And yeah, it's a hard job, but that's a lot of money that if you don't have body cams, you're not being transparent. Why are we paying cops this much money if we can't hold them accountable to do their jobs?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Jonathan.
Jonathan? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, this gentleman was first. Or Ariane, sorry.
But it's all right. People get my name wrong all the time.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I'm not tripping. I'm a black kid with a black name. People get it wrong all the time. And I said this earlier, and I got off stage early because I was really pissed off about it. But boss man, this went over your head. I told you that I went to a protest here in Joliet, and an officer told me all lives matter as a response to me saying Black Lives Matter, standing next to a man who refused to take his hand off his gun. Now, like you, I'm from the south side of Chicago, 76 South Bishop, Auburn, Gresham. That's where I'm from. Where I'm from, right, I have a lot of things that I'm taught, that I'm trained by people I grew up with, people that I respect dearly. Where I'm from, if that was to happen to me, if I was walking through the street and somebody screamed a rival group to me while I'm standing next to somebody holding a gun, somebody would make it home to their mothers, right? That's what I was taught when I was raised, right? I suppress all of that, all those things that I'm taught every day, from not to like the police, not to speak to the police, not to talk to them. And I come out of the world thinking, you know what, treat everybody fairly. So I want everybody to walk away with this meeting with that in the back of their mind. Like, yo, man, I'm not asking y'all to be perfect human beings. I'm just asking y'all to treat everybody fairly. But to you, boss man, I said that to you, and your response to me was, well, why didn't you report it? I just want you to put yourself in my shoes for a second. You ain't got to answer if you don't want to. A group of cops who, in my opinion, not even my opinion, they're snitches. That's what cops do. It's not even, you don't even call them snitches. That's their job. Y'all tell. That's kind of what cops do, right? A group of snitches that I pay every time I buy a candy bar for my little cousin to snitch. One of them said all lives matter. And I'm assuming that did not get back to you, correct?
Correct.
That did not get back to you.
No, I told you that until tonight when you told me.
And it's not, I'm not even mad at that. I'm mad at the fact that your response was, well, why didn't I report it? Think about that. Seriously, why are you going over your head? Why would I report that?
So I can fix it?
But I just saw a group of cops, snitches, not go tell on one another. Why would I even feel like, you know what, I'm gonna go do it. I don't get paid $100,000. No one gives me discounts at restaurants. I'm gonna go tell after I just seen a group of snitches not tell, and that's what I paid them to do. I'm just saying to put that in your head, like, that was your response. Why didn't I report it? Why would I? The people who I paid to do it didn't do it. I just want that because that went over your head, and I wanted that to be a sentiment that you somewhere put somewhere in your mind. That as a citizen, sometimes I don't feel, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna tell? Who am I gonna say that to? The cops aren't doing their job. The cops aren't telling. One of them, it was like 6 of them, none of them did anything. And I'm gonna go tell them, and then what's gonna happen? They're gonna police themselves. And you might be the greatest guy on earth, but I think you should really be thinking, not why didn't I report it, but why didn't that get back to you? Because I promise you, ever seen Looney Tunes with Bugs Bunny was like, you don't need my help to make you look stupid? I promise you I would never allow police to make them look bad. I promise you I never would. The question should not be why didn't I report it, it should be why didn't that get back to you?
Okay, all right, we got the point. Sorry. Yes, Jonathan? It's been a long night for everybody. It has. Yes.
Yep, I've been wearing these same socks since like 8 o'clock this morning. I've had a meal and a half in me. I came here right from work. I'm good. I do, again, just want to point out the very bottom thing. This is not an exhaustive list and a subject to revision. I do want to thank the council for finally talking, because it's been some great input. To that point, can I ask if this is going to go up on the YouTube, or is this just on Channel 6?
This will be on YouTube as well.
Okay.
Channel 6 has a YouTube channel.
Right. Because it's been a lot of hours, and I don't remember everything that all of you have said, but a lot of it has been very valuable. The last thing that I wanted to say is that it's become really evident to me that the collective bargaining and the union that we do work with for policing in Joliet is probably a little bit too powerful. And I understand that unions are something that are really important for a lot of working people. But there comes a time where you got to just admit that, okay, these people have too much power. We got to do something to make this stop. So I'm not saying to break up the union, but I'm definitely saying when it comes time again to talk about this contract, really mind your P's and Q's about it, and really think about what we talked about for these past few hours, the things that you guys responded, well, that's subject to the union contract, and see what you're signing off on the next time. The next time you guys sit down to say yes or no to a union contract that comes forth, really think about what we've talked about for these past few hours, because that really seems to be the issue to me at this point. So again, thank you for having us finally. Really think about that union, though. Have a good night.
Anybody else? Oh, Candace, go ahead.
Last time, I promise. What is our next step now? We've done this. We've had a great discussion about it. We've gone over all the points. What do we do from here? What is our next step? Who do we meet with? What happens?
Well, I thought it was Terry and I talked about this at one of our meetings, and we decided to have this meeting, because I'm chair of public safety and he's legislative. So we decided to have this together meeting to get the conversation going. 3 hours later, like we have these long meetings, don't we, Terry? But I wanted to thank all of you for coming, all of you for your input. It was a great conversation. Sometimes it got a little passionate. I got passionate, Larry gets passionate. But it's not to be argumentative, it's to just try to get along. So it's been a long meeting. I'm hungry, you're all hungry, we're getting tired and getting repetitive, but I want to thank you all for all the respect that you did show. And does the council have anything else to want to say?
I don't think we answered your question.
Oh, so your question, I'm sorry. we're gonna take about 3 of these for right now, discuss them, go over them, and then we can meet again probably in another month. Is that all right?
So
This is not the end, this is getting the conversation started.
at that rate, if you
Because
do
by that
3
time,
now-
our new city manager interim will be in place.
So
we gotta pick
you're
them up
gonna
to
do
speed.
3 at a time is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
This is not gonna happen overnight.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand
So-
that. However, there are cities that are passing these overnight.
But are a lot of those cities, do they have all these union contracts? So, all right, nothing against the unions, I'm sure our guys are great and they'll compromise on some of this stuff, so, again, thank you. Anybody else before we close the meeting?
Well, you gotta go through the agenda, you gotta ask for public comment again.
If I did, public comments, and nobody else. They're done. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jenny. I just wanted to speak about like the conversation earlier when Stringer was talking about his struggles, and then it kind of had this misunderstanding, and then it came. You spoke passionately about your struggles too, and it came down to privilege. You know, I wanted to talk about privilege because I always hear that a lot. I mean, a lot like on social media, and also like my sister too. After doing the protests, she felt, I told her that you should go out and, you know, support these people, you know, like their lives are on the line and they feel threatened, you know, but she got defensive, like you did, like and a lot of people do, a lot of people do that misunderstand, like, understand, like, we all have problems, definitely. Like, my problems, I moved 8 times in my life. My family struggles with income. I mean, there's a part of it is like, I mean, they have like, I have 4 siblings, and like, but also like, they don't really use money that well. But anyways, but like understand, I've worked 9-to-5 jobs. I worked McDonald's, Popeyes, and I'm still in a 9-to-5 job. I know how hard it is. That like, it's really hard out here, you know? But I can't deny that I still have privilege. Come on now. Because I don't, every single time I have to go out of my house, not even out of my house, sometimes even in your house, because sometimes I heard like stories like, please go to their house like to check on them. Like, I don't have to walk outside and be afraid that the cops could possibly kill me. I don't have to afraid for like, if I was a mother or if my mom had to do that, like they don't have to worry that a police officer has to, it might possibly kill you. And it's really, it's sort of sickening in a way to think that I understand that, you know? I'll never understand that because I don't live in that kind of world. I don't live in that skin. But as a human, I understand that like, that is unfair, it's wrong. It's totally wrong. Because you're my sister, in some kind of way, you're my sister, she's my sister, like we're all human. And like, I don't know, that's just something that I hear a lot about privilege, and like, I understand everyone has their own problems, but the thing is like, like someone else said, like, that they've been going through this for 400 years. If they've been going through this for 400 years, if they have been going through this for 400 years, how come till to this day it's still happening? That means that some kind of way this is planned, or somehow someone does not want them to have the same rights as everyone else. So that's something I really want to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else before we close out the meeting?
Y'all said that, you said the union contracts are negotiated, it's an outside agency that handles it, right?
No.
That y'all,
No, no.
No.
An outside law firm that may represent, so do the negotiating, right.
who pays them?
City. Not for, Jerry, not the ones representing the unions, they're the ones that represent the city. You got the unions on this side of the table, you got the city on this side of the table. No, you couldn't send 3 council members there. That would be open meetings violation. We'd have to negotiate like a meeting. And it would go, there's no way you can negotiate any contract, in a circus, with an audience.
They got too much power, and it needs to be reeled in. You need to take it back from them, because it's costing us millions of dollars in losses.
Before we go, what's going on with Eric Lurie's case?
We can't discuss that. It's under investigation.
Can we fire anybody? That's still an investigation too.
Sabrina, you want to explain it, please?
There's current litigation that's ongoing, so we can't discuss any of the details of the incident, the lawsuit, or the internal affairs investigation at this point.
If you guys got an officer who does something wrong, which clearly everyone has said that he done something wrong, that's not a part of the policy, at what point do we fire this person? Or do we wait till the litigation is over, we continue to pay this person? Like, if I do something wrong at work, like, they not, like, you fired, dude. Like, you got to get up out of here. I understand with the union and things like that, how that works, but at what point do you fire somebody? And that's what I asked the question about earlier. When can you fire somebody? You told me you just fired somebody, a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever. Like, this man committed a crime to an individual.
Okay, I have to stop you right here. We're not, this is not on the agenda.
No, I thought this was public comments right here.
It is, but it's not on the agenda. to
It's not
discuss
public comments
about
that you want to hear right now.
Well, we can't talk about it. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, I'm talking. You're not talking. I'm talking. So you can listen, right? I know you hungry. I'm fat as hell. I'm hungry too. Like, you can't be hungrier than me. Like, you can't be hungrier than me. So this is just me asking a question. You can listen. You can answer. It's up to you. But this is very, very important.
All right, well, you got 2 minutes left because it's a 4-minute mark.
I'm not even gonna take up 2 minutes. All I'm asking for is that some justice be done in a timely manner. That's why they're putting stipulations on 90 days. It doesn't take that long. You guys got the tape. You know what happened. We all know what happened. The medical reports says what happened. Do the right thing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any council comments?
None.
All right, need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Be well and stay safe going home.